wabarakatuh, and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yang berhormat, Tuan Liu Chin Tong, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, MITI. Yang berhormat, Datuk Haji Muhammad Nur Azam Osman, Mayor, Johor Bahru City Council. Yang berbahagia, Datuk Akmal Ahmad, Director, Real Estate and Infrastructure Division, Johor Corporation. Mr. Tyler Lim, Director, Transformation and Strategic Projects, Gulf Insider. Representatives from Maybank. Panelists, moderators, Dato-Dato, senior officials from the state and federal, management of Johor Corporation and Group, ladies and gentlemen. It's my absolute pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the Johor Conversations 2024, Pursuing Growth Through Infrastructure, Innovation, Technology and Sustainability. Thank you. Today, some of you may be asking, why are we here? Why are we outside of Johor? Today we take the Johor Conversations outside the borders of Johor for the very first time. So this is our 4th edition. But while we may be in Kuala Lumpur, the spirit of Johor, with its dynamism and potential, is at the core of our discussions today. The buzz surrounding projects like the RTS and the proposed Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, JS-SEZ, has resonated far beyond the state's borders, drawing attention to the exciting transformations taking place in Johor, particularly in strengthening economic ties with our neighbor, Singapore. Welcome, sir. We welcome Mr. Shivakumar Nair, Deputy High Commissioner of the Republic of Singapore to Malaysia. My name is Nina, and together with my co-host Madeline, who will be taking over shortly, we will dive into the discussions and insights that will shape the future of Johor's infrastructure and economic landscape. This is the first of a 3-part series this year, and we are delighted to have all of you join us today as we explore the future of Johor's infrastructure and economic growth. But before we embark on this journey, let us seek blessings. And I would like to invite Imam Bak Izzadin from Wakaf Anur Corporation for the Dua recitation. Imam Bak.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم النبي الكريم وآله وأصحابه الكرام الفاتحة أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد Alhamdulillah, puji dan syukur kami rafakkan kepadamu ya Allah di atas segala nikmat yang dikurniakan kepada kami. Syukur jua dilafazkan kepadamu dalam setiap peluang dan kesempatan yang diberikan. Kami diberi ruang untuk bersama-sama dalam siri persidangan Johor Conversation, Pursuing Growth Through Infrastructure, Innovation, Technology and Sustainability pada hari ini. Kami memohon dan berdoa padamu ya Allah, agar persidangan ini memberi input bermanfaat kepada kami untuk disemat dan diingat. Oh Allah, on this auspicious morning, we express our gratitude to you for allowing us to attend this conference series. Today we are grateful to be given the opportunity to be together with members of the conference. We seek your blessing for the smooth progress of this event from the beginning till the end. Oh Allah, bless Johor Corporation and Gulf Insider who have initiated the Johor Conversation with the intention of propelling Johor economic growth. with an innovative and resilient foundation accelerated by technology. Ya Allah, wahai Tuhan kami memohon petunjuk di atas setiap perancangan dan keputusan yang dicapai, agar kami senantiasa berada di bawah naungan perlindungan, keselamatan dan beroleh keredaan dalam amanah yang diberikan kepada kami. Tunjukkan kepada kami jalan keluar di atas kesulitan, kemudahan dalam merungkai permasalahan, dan kurnia kejayaan pada penghujung jalan, bukan sahaja di dunia, malahan kejayaan hakiki di akhirat nanti. Allahumma jama'al jama'ana hadha jama'al marhuma wa tafarruqna min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma wa la taj'al Allahumma fina wa la ma'na wa la man yatba'una shaqiyan wa la mahruman wa la matruda. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina 'adzaban nar. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minkum.
Terima kasih, Imam. So let's kick things off with our opening remarks from Tyler Lim. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Tyler.
Yang Berhormat Tuan Liew Chin Tong, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, Malaysia. Mr. Shiva Kumar Nair, Deputy High Commissioner of the Republic of Singapore to Malaysia. Yang Berhormat Datuk Haji Muhammad Norazam Osman, Mayor, Johor Bahru City Council. Yang Berbahagia Prof. Dr. Ong Kim Ming, Member, Board of Directors, Malaysian Investment Development Authority. Ms. Wong Yok Hui, Director, Southeast Asia and Oceania Division, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Singapore. Datuk, friends from the Malaysian Federal Government, Johor State Government, Johor Corp Senior Management, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the first installment of the Johor Conversation Series for 2024, Pursuing Growth through Infrastructure, Innovation, Technology and Sustainability, organized by Johor Corporation and Governsider. When we gathered for the season ender of the Johor Conversations for 2023 in Johor, I pointed across the Johor Straits and noted the progress of the RTS link that was being built. It's a pity that today we cannot look out and monitor the progress of the RTS link because we are here in Kuala Lumpur, which in itself is a bold move, and I applaud the Johor Corporation team for having the vision to move the Johor Conversations out of Johor. This move is in line with the Johor Conversations aspiration since day one, which is to be the key driving force towards unlocking the immense potential of Johor as an economic powerhouse within Malaysia and across ASEAN, through the building of a community of leaders, both private and public, local and regional, to foster closer collaboration and partnerships. In my conversations with various government officers and private sector friends, they too concurred that having this edition in Kuala Lumpur will attract a different audience as we have here today and recast the spotlight on Johor. Today and for the rest of the Johor Conversations for this year, we will pay particular attention to the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone. In the first panel, we will seek to look deeper into the JS-SEZ, the opportunities it holds, and what must the governments on both sides do for it to be successful. We will seek to address why, despite the close relations between Singapore and Malaysia, Singapore and Johor, the SEZ was mooted only now and not earlier. And of course, why is now an opportune moment? Also, whether is this special economic zone a sign of bigger things to come for Singapore and other Malaysian states, and even for the broader ASEAN. I spoke briefly about the RTS earlier. It promises to be a game changer as it adds another connectivity link between Singapore and Johor, with a capacity of 10,000 passengers per hour in each direction. Many are looking forward to it, as this will help to ease the congestion on the causeway, which today is one of the busiest border crossings in the world. I will attest to that pain, having just only last week been caught in a 5-hour traffic jam trying to get back from Johor to Singapore. It was also a pain on the bladder, if you know what I mean. The RTS is not the only infrastructure development in Johor that will complement the JS-SEZ. There will be many more infrastructure development, and along with it raises the dilemma of what to build and a prioritization of when to build what. Additionally, there will be a need to address the forward planning required because infrastructure projects do have a very long time horizon, and these projects have to be relevant for the future. This is also why our panelists will discuss infrastructure development in panel 2, especially on smart and sustainable infrastructure. Our final panel will touch on the enablers: technology, innovation, and talent. These are enablers that will allow for scale, which is especially critical when we discuss economic growth. Questions like, which are the technologies that ought to be in focus? How do we attract the right talent? And at the same time, grow local talent so that there is a multiplier even beyond the special economic zone. The anticipation is building as we await to hear more details from both governments for the SEZ, hopefully sometime later this year. The impact on the SEZ on the economy in Johor and Singapore and its people will not be felt immediately, and the full effects will probably only come many more years later. But nonetheless, these are still exciting times that we live in. So as we embark on this journey together, I urge you to keep in mind why Johor Conversations in the first place. And that is for you to embrace the spirit of collaboration, innovation, and shared prosperity. Use the opportunity here today and in subsequent Johor Conversations to come to forge new partnerships, to engage in meaningful conversations, to create impact for the future. Finally, I wish to thank our sponsor, Maybank, for making these Johor Conversations possible. Johor Corporation, especially to President and Chief Executive Yang Berbahagia Datuk Syed Muhammad, Nina, and the team for having that vision and belief in creating a flagship event for Johor, as well as to thank everybody in the organizing committee for the hard work to put together this conference. And I encourage just some applause for the organizing committee, please. I wish everybody here an enriching learning and networking time at the Johor Conversations. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for setting the stage for our discussions today. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Yang Berhormat Tuan Liew Chin Tong, Deputy Minister of Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, to give us his keynote. A warm welcome to YB.
Dato' Angmar Ahmad of Jacob, Dato' Noor Azam Osman, Mayor of Johor Bahru, Tyler, my friends, Ken Ming, Francis Hutchinson, His Excellency Kumar Nair, Deputy High Commissioner, Wong Yuk Hui from MTI Singapore, friends and fellow Malaysians and Singaporeans, a very good morning to all of you. Salam Sejahtera, Salam Malaysia Madani. May I first thank Jacob for inviting me to say a few words at today's Johor Conversation 2024. The theme for today's conversation is pursuing growth through infrastructure, innovation, technology, and sustainability. I'm impressed with the theme as it captures exactly what we need in the next phase of Malaysia's development story. Let me start with an advertisement. By the end of June, my new book, Second Takeoff, Strategies for Malaysia's Resurgence, will be in the bookstore. The core idea of the book is that for the last 25 years, we have somehow lost our way. There was a first economic takeoff that happened between 1988 and 1997. But after that, we kind of not growing much. But we are now presented with an opportunity for a second takeoff. Malaysia has a second chance because the world has now changed. The course of the world has changed altogether compared to the last 25 years. During the last period, the world was competing on cost and economic efficiency. But now the world cares about resilience and economic security. Malaysia has a second chance also because the unity government under Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim is determined to bring about Malaysia's renaissance. At the core of the second takeoff is precisely how Malaysia can transform itself from a land and resource-based economy to an economy that is based upon technology. This is a challenge captured by today's theme. It is not the first time that Johor is trying to grow with global shift and new technology development. The modern Johor Sultanate was founded upon global shift. Founded upon the coming about of steamship and steam-powered mobility. Think about this. 170 years ago, 180 years ago, because of steamship, the world became closer. The world became closer, and therefore, the founding of Johor Bahru came about, coincided with the advent of steamships, which shortened the time needed to move commercial cargo, thus making Europe-oriented export-led commercial plantation the main economic activities in Johor Bahru then, a highly profitable venture. So it is also not the first time that a regional plan is being devised. Tyler's mentioned about why now. It wasn't because we have never thought about that. There was something called the idea of Sijori back in the early 90s, and there was also Iskandar region that was launched in 2006. But the Iskandar development ended up as a property play without sufficient emphasis on creating better jobs with better pay and better life for Johorians. The plan at the time was to attract the richer strata of Singaporeans to come, stay, play, and study in the Iskandar region. There wasn't enough emphasis on building technology and innovation in Johor. Now, very few nations and cities have a second chance. Now that we have a second chance, we must do it well. At a deeper level, Malaysia as a nation needs to celebrate the rise of secondary cities and regions. Since independence in 1957, Malaysia has been a polity that has been too centralized. Now, I'm speaking of this as a federal deputy minister, but I think we need a new way of looking at federal and state relationship, and we need a new way of looking at secondary cities or second cities. Now, if we are successful in creating Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, the gauge of success, what success means? Success means that if over the next couple of years, or maybe in a decade time, in 2 decades time, we look back, Johor Bahru becomes, or the greater Johor Bahru becomes known to every one of us, known to the world, and known to people who make decisions as the second economic capital of Malaysia, then I think we can say that we are successful. What do I mean by second economic capital? Look at Osaka to Japan. Look at Melbourne to Australia. Look at Busan to Korea. If Greater Johor Bahru in 5, 10, 15 years' time means to you, people in this room, as the second economic capital, then I think we are quite successful. Imagine that the Klang Valley, the Greater Johor Bahru, the Penang Kulim conurbation, as the 3 main engines firing at once, coupled with the resource-rich Kuantan and the East Coast, Sarawak and Sabah, each acting as a catalyst, Malaysia's growth will multiply. Therefore, for the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone to succeed, we need a paradigm shift to celebrate the Greater Johor Bahru as the second economic capital of the nation. The Johor-SEZ is being proposed in the context of a much larger global shift. During the hyper-globalization period, China was a factory for the world, and Singapore was one of the world's financial centers. Between China and Singapore, there wasn't much other places that was needed, including Malaysia. Because China was so efficient and low cost then as a factory, or factory of the world, the rest of the world experienced premature deindustrialization, including Malaysia. Now that the world is restructuring supply chains, we are at the start of a new period. Perhaps the next 20 or 30 years will be a similar trajectory which will see the world having more than one supply chain. Maybe there'll be one US supply chain, there'll be one China supply chain, there'll be another supply chain that is open in the middle ground with Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, maybe Brazil, maybe some of the potential future African economy. And that probably will be the structure of the world. And which is why by then, or even now, regional production networks become very important. In this new world that we are being thrown into reluctantly, the sooner we embrace each other to form strong regions that are sticky, coherent, and collaborative, the better our shared future would be. It is in such a context that the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone should envisage itself as a mini common market between Johor and Singapore, with the possibility of extending it to the Riau Islands, realizing the Sijori ideas which was mooted a generation ago. I was just reminded this morning by Faiz of Johor Plantation. Coincidentally, Menteri Besar of Johor just visited the Riau Island and came with a very similar idea that we should imagine Johor, Singapore, and Batam eventually as one single regional production network. Let me briefly touch on what all this entails on the ground. The Johor-Singapore SEZ has only 3 key issues to solve. That's from my view. I must say that I speak for myself and not representing any agencies. I think there are 3 major issues to deal with. Actually, not so complicated. The first is the movement of people and goods. The second is where exactly is the SEZ. And the third is incentive. If we can solve these 3 problems, I would say that we are quite successful. The question of movement of people and goods, I would say that we should be ambitious. We now have the causeway, we have the second link, we are going to have RTS, we still have the Tebrau shuttle. We should be envisaging ferries from Puteri Harbour to Singapore, ferry from Forest City to Singapore. Coincidentally, these 2 places are within my parliamentary constituency. And perhaps ferry from Pasir Gudang to Changi. And we should envisage and be prepared to think of, or to prepare to think about more linkages in order to make traffic and mobility a lot more smoother. And as far as immigration is concerned, we should make it very smooth, seamless transport for at least the frequent travelers. As far as the question of where, Menteri Besar of Johor, Dato' Onn Hafiz has been very clear. The hope or aspiration or the view of the Johor government is to have it within the entire Iskandar region and Pengerang. Now we have dealt with 2 questions. The third question is incentive. On 12th of May, I spoke at the Johor State Assembly as an assemblyman, and I suggested that we should look at incentive in a very different way. If we have a huge area, then we must be very targeted and restrictive as far as incentive is concerned. And I suggested that we should look at incentive in 4 different ways with a new way of looking at things. The first, incentive for Malaysian workers returning to work in selected critical areas. The second, which I think perhaps this is relevant and important to our conversation about supply chain-based incentive, especially for Malaysian companies that contribute to a strong ecosystem and a resilient supply chain. We'll need clear technological roadmaps for the SEZ so that we understand the gaps in the supply chain. Otherwise, we will only be attracting firms, or we will only have disjointed supply chain. And this is relevant to Johor, to Malaysia, and to Singapore. We do not want to just have firms, and we do not want to have only disjointed supply chain. We want to be able to build supply chain resilience, and when we want to build supply chain resilience, we must be able to have a clear technological roadmap on what we want to build and what sort of supply chain they want to have. A third incentive I suggested was incentive for control towers, such as regional headquarters, center of excellence, and R&D center. And the fourth incentive I suggested is incentive for the state government. Now, this is hopefully a bit new to the conversation. Instead of thinking of incentive for casting a wide net for various companies, we should think of how to incentivize the state government so that the state shares some proceeds from corporate income tax collection from within Johor, from within the SEZ, so that the state government has a lot more resources to cater for better infrastructure in the SEZ area. And this hopefully will help to transform the federal-state relationship in the long run. Ultimately, how we position the SEZ has a lot to do with how we position Malaysia. In a rather simplistic way, we do not see Malaysia as competing with Vietnam, or we do not want investors to conceive Malaysia as a Vietnam plus. For the Johor SEZ to succeed, we would like to see Johor complementing Singapore's supply chain and as a Singapore at a discount. Again, thank you to Jacob for making this possible, and I wish you a great conference ahead, and I hope that together we can brainstorm and think of fresh ideas so that the Johor SEZ is not just a new idea for Malaysia and Singapore, but an idea that will work, an idea that will actually take root and help change the national conversation and not just the Johor conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, YB Liu, for the inspiring keynote. I'm Madeline from Gulf Insider, and I'm your co-host for today. Next up, we have a panel discussion on the topic Johor's economic landscape, current trends and future prospects with the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, JS-SEZ. Our panelists will dive into Johor's economic landscape, exploring current trends and prospects with a spotlight on the JS-SEZ's role in driving growth, innovation, and sustainable development. If you have any questions for our panelists, please go to slido.com and key in the code JC2024 and post your questions to our panelists. We'll be using the same QR code for Q&A for all the panel discussions today. I would now like to invite our moderator for this panel, Mr. Anthony Raja Davados, Chair of GBS Malaysia, Chapter of PICOM, and the Country Managing Director of Corn Ferry Malaysia, to introduce our esteemed panelists. Please welcome Mr. Anthony.
Good morning. Thank you. May I invite our panelists upstage, please? Good morning, everyone. Firstly, thank you, Johor Corp, Jacob, and Gov Insider for putting this and curating this session together. Our topic is on Johor's economic landscape, current trends and future prospects with the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone. I think Tyler and YB, Deputy Minister, have set the stage already in terms of what we need to drive forward. And I think I'm pleased to have distinguished panelists with me, Ms. Wong Yok Hui, Director, Southeast Asia and Oceania Division of Ministry of Trade and Industry, Singapore. Professor Dr. Ong Kiang Ming, Member of the Board of Directors, Malaysia Investment Development Authority. Dr. Francis Hutchinson, Senior Fellow and Coordinator of Malaysia Studies Program, ICS Yusof Ishak Institute, Singapore. Dr. Chua Hak Bin, Regional Co-Head, Macro Research, Maybank. I've been advised for us to be gently provocative in this session. So YB Minister was already provocative, I think. So he's set up for a stage for us to kind of get this going. I hope all of you got your Slido. So this is how it's going to work. I'm going to get two common questions across our panelists today. And right after that, we will go into one question each with them. And as we complete the fifth one is yours. So you got to be ready with that. And then we will do that again. And hopefully we can complete that within the hour that has been given to us. All right? Okay. So with that, let me start with that, setting the stage for the panel question across to all our panelists together. What does Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone mean to you? And what were your first or initial thoughts when it was announced? Let's start with Ms. Wong.
Thank you, Anthony. I guess ladies first today. Yeah. I think what does SEZ mean to me? So maybe some background about myself. I'm personally now with the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Director overseeing Southeast Asia and Oceania. I have been working actually a large part of my career on the China file and in the China market. So I only recently transferred to the Southeast Asia Oceania Division 2 years ago. So frankly speaking, to be on the file at such an exciting time of Southeast Asia growth, just like what YB Liu has mentioned just now, is indeed very exciting. And I think this is a moment that both Singapore and Malaysia can seize together, right? To seize the opportunities, not just by deepening cooperation between ourselves, but also to seize the opportunities arising from a greater global context that is changing. I think YB also mentioned about the shift in terms of global supply chains. So I, as part of the policy team on the Singapore side, is in the hot seat, driving seat, together, of course, with our management and the rest of the government agencies, speaking very closely with our Malaysian counterparts, both at the federal and local level. We have been in the process from the start of the task force study to the signing of the MOU, and now, of course, deep in the discussions with our Malaysian counterparts as well. In fact, today, this morning now, there is a meeting going on with our Malaysian counterparts. So, however, I think beyond the buzz and excitement, I'm sure equally across the causeway, everyone is very excited. I think at the core of it is what exactly is the substance, right, and the details of the SEZ. And I think this is a discussion that we need to have with both Malaysian and Singapore corporates and businesses, right? To understand your business needs better, right? So that the zone, at the end of the day, serve a business need so that it can be meaningful and substantive in the long run for all of us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Yok Hui. Professor Dr. Ong.
I can call me Kian Ming, Anthony. We've known each other for
I can call you. Just want to make sure I address that.
Thanks, Gov Insider, as well as Joe Corp, for setting up this panel and for inviting myself and also others to join this panel. In terms of the JS-SEZ, when I first heard about it, three things came to mind, and they have been sort of like substantiated over the past 1 year or so. The first thing is opportunity to build trust. And I think I'm here actually to say things that Chin Tong cannot say, at least publicly. And I think I can say that before 2018, there was a good time of trust building and initiatives that were done by the Singapore and Malaysian government. And during that time, there was a comfort level between the former Prime Minister, Dato Sri Najib, and also former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. Between 2018 and then COVID, we had a few prime ministerial changes. That time, I think it was a little bit more challenging. So when the JS-SEZ was mooted, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for re-engagement between Malaysia and Singapore from a trust-building perspective, so that this can be a start for many more meaningful interactions to come. And the trust building, picking up what Chin Tong said just now, is not just between Malaysia and Singapore. It's between federal in Malaysia and the state governments in Malaysia. And I think that kind of interaction, which we can talk about later, needs to continue at a more substantive level, so that federal don't see that they are giving up certain rights to the state, and then the state don't see that the federal is exploiting them, so to speak. So opportunity for trust building is one. Second, opportunity for innovative thinking and outside the box thinking. Because in the context of this SEZ, I think there are many players that have different ideas, but the opportunity for us to do something very, very different is something that I'm very excited about. And I'll just give one very simple example. Kumar has heard me speak a lot about this. We want to do a passport-free travel between Malaysia and Singapore. And one of the things in which we can do to facilitate that is to have some sort of a national digital ID on both sides that is mutually recognizable. And if, let's say, we have that context, not only will we be able to facilitate passport-free travel, we can use the access to this national digital ID system to have a lot more commercial applications tacked onto them, commercial transactions on the banking and other services side. And then this would be an economic catalyst for both sides of the border. So this kind of innovative thinking is something that I think we need to push more of in terms of opportunity. And then I think the last opportunity is to showcase this model, not just within Malaysia, but regionally and internationally as well. If, let's say, we want to compare this to Shenzhen and Hong Kong, are there any modalities that we can actually use to showcase Johor-Singapore first, and then later maybe other parts of Malaysia, and then finally on a regional basis, incorporating ASEAN? So if, let's say, some of the things with regards to people mobility that Chin Tong talked about just now can be seen to be successful from a work permit standpoint between Johor and Singapore, maybe other countries in ASEAN getting Bintan and Batam to start off with from the Indonesian side would be good game changers. So these three opportunities are what comes to mind.
Thank you, Kian Ming. Now we are going to shift the angle a little bit into academia to Dr. Francis.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Yes, so I am an academic. I've been looking at interactions between Singapore and the surrounding regions for a number of years. I've also had a great interest in Johor history. I'm also probably one of the few people here that's been to the Johor archives, and everyone is very friendly because not too many people go there. So an open invitation to visit the friendly people in the Johor State Archives. So what did I first think? When this idea came out, so my first thought was there's actually already been a lot of very important work done. So Chin Tong was just talking about the real boom in investment and manufacturing that happened from 1988 to 1997. And this is the context around the Sejori growth triangle. And this was very important because you actually really had buy-in from the governments of Malaysia, of Singapore, of Indonesia, as well as the provincial government in Indonesia, and of course the Johor state government. And this was a very interesting joint marketing initiative, and it did actually put the region on the map. The other thing that you saw really taking place during this time that was very important was a lot of very good work by the Johor government, by TPM Technopark, to really build out industrial parks all along strategic areas within Johor to be able to absorb this investment. Then you also had, of course, Batam Indo-Industrial Park in Batam being set up. And then you also had a lot of work by private sector individuals in terms of logistics companies to really link these areas together. So this worked very, very well up until, of course, the Asian financial crisis, and then this sort of joint marketing model really kind of fell behind the wayside, and then you tended to have more individualized marketing campaigns. The second moment, of course, is 2006 when we had the South Johor Economic Region, and then this, of course, became Iskandar Malaysia. And then we saw the good work being built previously on the manufacturing side really being applied to the service sector side. And this initiative was good because you also had elements of urban planning, and you also had not just people from governments, but you also had private sector actors coming in and generating a shared vision for what Southern Johor could look like. So now we're in the third moment, the third iteration. So number one, I think, yes, this is a good idea. Number two, it builds on a very good base of work that has already been done. Number three, and I think perhaps in the course of our discussion today, we can talk about what are some of the lessons learned, because there were some painful lessons that we learned in the first and the second moment of this process. And then the third one is more broadly, and again, I think we'll be discussing this here, what can we do that is value added, that is new, that can help, number one, bring the actors together, but number two, I think particularly on the Johor side, help develop its regional innovation system. So it's not just about what investment comes in, but it's about how firms present in Johor work together to engage in a process that's called speciation, where they work together but really focus on very, very selected areas of the value chain and deepen not just their technology, but also their process capabilities. So I think this is what we need to discuss today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. And now let's talk with the money man, Dr. Chua.
So my name is Hak Bin. I'm based in Singapore. I'm an economist with Maybank. So I guess two levels. On a personal level, I'm actually from JB. I grew up there for 12 years. I went to primary school in Johor Bahru. My mom and brother still lives there. And the Causeway has been the backdrop, I think, of my whole life, essentially. My mom worked in a nurse in Singapore and then came back to JB. My dad couldn't get a job in Singapore, so I ended up back in JB. So it's been always there, and I think and as an economist, I think the second level is that this causeway is sort of an artificial construct, right? It's a barrier built to restrict trade movements, capital. And I think that's why you had this big divergence of growth, and kind of represents the ups and downs of Malaysia-Singapore relations over time, whether from the early days where I remember going across to Singapore to shop, it was the other way, 40 years ago, and then to the days of then the Crooked Bridge, the pandemic, and now hopefully to the QR code, where hopefully the movement can be increased dramatically. But it's a tremendous potential. When you look at the GDP of Johor, it's only about 7.5% that of Singapore, right? Population is 4.2 million, which is not that far away from Singapore, 6 million. But yet, the gap is so huge. So I think the potential to close, to converge, is actually quite remarkable. My hope one day, as someone from JB, but now living in Singapore, is that we can cross seamlessly, not just hopefully with QR codes, but something like Shenzhen. What happened in Europe, where we can cross, not just passport-free, visa-free, rights to live, retire, and work across on both sides. I think that would be a big game changer.
Thank you, Dr. Chua. So visa-free, passport-free, traffic-free. The requests are coming in, so we want to make sure we are capturing it. But before I go to the next question to them, I'm going to request something from all the delegates up there. We've got about 12 questions. Not bad, I think, within the 5-10 minutes. I would like you to prioritize the questions, which means you can choose and say, this is one more that I would like to ask. So the top questions will be asked right away. So let's go ahead with the second. What do you hope to see in the Special Economic Zone by 2050?
Okay, 2050 is 25 years from now.
25
years from now. So I think if Jeannie allows us to make 3 wishes, I have 3 hopes here. I think the first hope is for the JS-SEZ to be a gold standard for economic integration. I think there are a few key trusts that conceptually has been already announced. One is in terms of the flow of goods, the other one is in terms of the flow of people, and the other one is in terms of the flow of investment. So first thing first, gold standard for economic integration. The second hope is how the JS-SEZ can be a choice destination for investors internationally. And this how we can do it is by complementing one another, by bringing the twinning comparative advantages of Singapore and Johor, and of course the wider Malaysia, right, within the JS-SEZ, how we can be a choice investment destination by working together. And third is, by 2050, how the JS-SEZ can also contribute to both Singapore and Malaysia's net zero ambitions. Yeah, because a key theme today is about sustainability. So I think all these themes are coming on board. You know, we need to go towards a greener future, a more digital-enabled future. So this is a future that we can potentially work towards too. I think if we are committed, and like what Dr. Ong said, we trust one another, right, to do and think the best for one another, right, to move towards to that goal. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Yokui. Kian-Ming?
I'm a bit more practical. I'm not sure where I'll be in 25 years' time. Maybe I can share what I hope will happen or can potentially happen in 2 to 3 years' time. And building upon some of the opportunities that I talked about just now. First thing, if let's say the trust can be escalated to such a level whereby we can make joint investment propositions, meaning, and this is something that I said yesterday at the Semiconductor Southeast Asian panel discussion, why not have Singapore and Malaysia make a joint bid to attract TSMC and the manufacturing ecosystem to come to the Johor-Singapore SEZ and put real financial resources behind it, right? So even if, let's say, we're not successful, at least we have gone through the process of trying to do this pitch, and that will increase the level of trust and also understanding of each other's pain points as well as strengths. So that's one thing that I hope to see. Second thing, I think if, let's say, going on the net zero theme, if, let's say, we can pitch joint ideas in terms of setting up a Johor-Singapore net zero industrial park in Johor, involving the GLCs on both sides, whether it's Sunrise or Keppel Corp from Singapore side, and then also bring in the investors from different parts of the world to be able to participate in high value-added manufacturing activities in that kind of ecosystem, and that can also potentially be a gold standard as well. And then the third thing, leveraging on what Francis had said just now, having capital, especially unlocking capital from Singapore, especially the capital that is in the home offices and also private equity and venture capital side, to be deployed for services solutions in the tech sector, in other kind of sectors where you can use Johor Bahru as a experimental kind of a test bed. And from then on, build up the services ecosystem. Because Chin Tong would know this well, and our friends from Johor Corp would know this well, the services ecosystem actually is very, very weak. And if you want to have a tech kind of venture ecosystem, you are trying to compete against Singapore. Why not work with Singapore, deploy that capital, take away some of the pressures in terms of cost of living and cost of doing doing business in Singapore, bring that ecosystem so that both sides can benefit. And if, let's say, we have these three kind of prongs, the investment prong, the manufacturing or the industrial park together with the net zero prong, and then lastly the services prong, that would be a very good gold standard to pursue in the next 3 years.
Thank you, Kian-Ming. That's almost like we are talking about Shenzhen, Hong Kong, into 1970s to where they are today in terms of how the shift has taken place.
Yeah, but we can leapfrog a lot of that because
exactly.
of so many of the new technologies, generative AI, data centers that we can, net zero kind of initiatives that we can deploy in that ecosystem.
Okay, good. Dr. Francis.
Thank you. So I will build on the very good work done by Kian-Ming just now. So I've been doing some talking to companies in the logistics space, and what they've said is actually many of their clients in the electronics sector as well as the pharmaceutical sector are very interested to ramp up their investments across the border. So what I would like to see in the medium term is a lot more of this. Number one, so of course investment flowing across, but also on the Johor side, moving away from what we call as a hub and spoke model. So this means that you'll have the hub in Singapore, and then you'll have one facility in Johor rooted into what is happening to Singapore and then world markets. to having more interaction between firms on the Johor side. So you have what we call locationally rooted competitive advantage. So you have more firms on the Johor side catering to each other, which will also help innovation. This is one. Another thing that came out from my conversations were actually, I think, a couple of things that could be low-hanging fruit. And so we're talking now about QR codes for people moving across. But actually what I learned from my conversations with them is that the customs forms on both sides are actually different, the Malaysian side and the Singaporean side. Could it not be possible to have the same form that could be filled out just once and shared? This is one. The second is, of course, we all lived through COVID. We saw the restrictions on movement of people, but we had seamless movement of goods. But could we not think about QR codes for movement of goods too, to make it even more seamless? The third point contains or concerns the connections. So YB Liu was just talking about different type of connections, having more. So we have ferries. I would supplement this. What about considering a bridge between Pasir Gudang and Changi? And this could help take off some of the heavy cargo that levies on the causeway and the second link. Relatedly, I would just like to share that on the 28th of June, next month, the causeway will be 100 years old. And so this causeway has served us very well, and actually I think it is a little bit underappreciated, because when you have people that talk about from the Johor side going to Singapore or vice versa, it's almost like the causeway doesn't exist, right? So it's taken for granted. So we just had a big conference to celebrate the 100 years, and one of the most interesting papers at the conference was looking at the use of the word tambak, right? So how the causeway is used. And almost always the causeway, and I would say this for English too, is taken as a point of transit rather than a place of being, of existence, of identity, right? And it is, I think, for Johorians, for Singaporeans, an important part of a shared identity. And last point relatedly, we're being encouraged to be bold. I will just share with you one of the findings from this conference. We had someone that lives in a fishing community right by the second link. So she shared satellite photos of the water on either side of the causeway. And it is actually very different. On the Pasir Gudang side, it is clean, it is clear. On the other side, it is actually muddy and brackish. And that is because it's a little bit narrower, it's difficult for water to circulate. And in its original conception, the causeway actually allowed water to flow across. You were actually could even take small little boats, right? So you had flow of water, and it could be very possible with some underwater piping to reestablish this flow of water, so we would have a healthier biosphere in and around the causeway. So this is just a radical proposal I would like to share with the Orang Besar here today.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. Reimagining the causeway, the ecosystem, the movement of people, the ecological aspects, right? All of that. Good. Thank you. Dr. Chua.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ken Ming, Francis. There should be more business collaboration across. I guess in 25 years' time, it's hard to imagine, but hopefully there won't even be an immigration to stop at the border, right? I mean, if you can drive from Netherlands to Germany free, hopefully with facial recognition and so on, you can just cross over easily. But to get away some of the restrictions, perhaps on the other side, on a more social level, that a person in Singapore with an aging population wanting to retire, say in Johor, can do it without restrictions, right? You don't have to apply for the My Second Home scheme. For example, when I check, only 2% of Singaporeans are currently under My Second Home scheme, which is only about 1,000, right? In contrast, we don't have exact estimates, it's all top secret, but I think there are probably 1 million Malaysians in Singapore, right? Which is part of the brain drain and the talent flow. So why not make it easy for the other side? If Singaporeans want to come the other way, stay, live, and spend their money. Insurance companies that are in Singapore should also cover the hospitals in Johor. Students who want to go to schools can do so easily across. So I think at the social at the level as well to have more on both sides.
So you're talking about humanizing financial services across both causeway? All right, thank you on that. On the next note, the question from the delegates, the top question ranked by all of you, I'm going to be asking the panelists for inputs, is basically Iskandar was not very successful in attracting investments from Singapore. I think they're referring to the past. What have we learned and what will be different this time around? Open to any one of you to take up.
Okay, so I think the Iskandar region did have some successes that are important. So I think the first thing to say was it was ambitious and it tried to widen the horizon of what is possible. So we know that up until that point in time, most of the interactions across the border had been in manufacturing. So this was, let's try and look at services. So I think certain things worked well. So I think health worked well. We've got more hospitals, more diverse offering of services. We also have EduCity that is indirectly and directly also contributing to the human capital base of Johor. I think that worked well. And then I think a couple of things on the logistics side also worked well. So of course, we know 1998, we had the second link, then we also had Port Tanjung Pelepas shortly after. And then one of the things under Iskandar was to bring in the Netherlands Maritime Institute of Technology to then churn out very skilled people to feed into the logistics sector. So I think this worked very well. I think a couple of sectors didn't work so well, and I'll talk about why in a second. And now what sectors were these? These were finance, and these were ICT and creative industries. Why is that? I think because for these types of sectors to work, these are very human capital intensive. These are areas or sectors where you need like a very, very specific urban environment, where you need what we call agglomeration economies. People like Richard Florida have talked about creative cities, where you have a really, really high density of very highly skilled people. And in this sense, yes, Johor was, you can say, obviously competing with Singapore, but it was also competing with KL and the Islamic finance sector here as well. So this was quite difficult for it to work, and I think that it was understandable. So I would say let's not revisit these sectors, let's not go back to these sectors, let's accept these don't really work, and then let's focus on what we do well. And so one of the things that did very, very well during the Iskandar period was, number one, real estate. Okay, perhaps we can shift our focus a little bit. Manufacturing still did very well, and that was even though Iskandar wasn't really trying to build manufacturing. So when I talked to government officials during that time, from 2010 to about 2016, 2018, when they talked about manufacturing, they would say, it's very cyclical, it's very, very competitive. But I think, as YB Liu has mentioned, we're now in a second moment, right? And manufacturing is important. It generates all sorts of spillovers, and it also generates formal sector jobs from your lowest machinery operators to your most sophisticated engineer and technician. So this worked even though Iskandar wasn't really looking at it. So I think we need to really take on board, number one, some of these more agglomeration economy focused service sectors don't work so well. And number two, manufacturing does, and now is our time to really focus on it.
Thank you. Can we?
Okay, I'll again say certain things which maybe others are not so comfortable to say, and I'll focus on real estate, one of Chin Tong's favorite topics. When I looked at the Iskandar Development Region plan that was designed by Khazanah at that time, IRDA, it was actually a very systematic plan, like what Francis talked about just now, in terms of planning the different sectors, EduCity, the leisure part, and then the creative part. And I think those elements are still there. But one of the things which probably created a lot of worry in terms of capital investment and movement of capital from Singapore to Malaysia, to Johor, was the elephant in the southern part of Johor, which is Forest City. I think that sucked a lot of confidence out of the investment ecosystem. And that is something that we probably have to revisit in terms of the larger ecosystem of of trying to revive or rebuild the Johor economic and investment landscape. So when I talk about property, right, I think it is something that is of great interest among different investors. But the way we want to think about property or real estate investments needs to be much more broadened and much more holistic and much more sustainable. So one aspect that I talked about just now was the net zero industrial park concept. That is in the larger industrial development ecosystem that we need to put in much more thought into, and to link that up with things like renewable energy and also provision of water. Both areas which industrial parks needs, data centers needs, and also the larger population of Johor needs as well. So there's just one play. The other play with regards to real estate is the lifestyle dimension. In terms of being able to do things in southern Johor that maybe you would want to either replicate parts of Singapore or even enhance. So making that kind of lifestyle play in terms of work-life balance, in terms of access to public spaces of recreation, having things in Malaysia that Singapore doesn't have access to, in terms of accessibility to nature reserves that we have quite a lot of in southern Johor, accessibility to some of the water spots and other kind of these kinds of lifestyle issues that we can bring into the picture. So then the real estate play should go beyond the kind of trying to make money through building condos and stuff like that. And pushing even further, why not reimagine Forest City as a place where we can have international exhibition center, which, as far as I know, Johor Bahru does not have that many, of, and bring in, use those kinds of facilities to be able to host even sporting activities that other places may not have the same kind of resources and infrastructure. So we have to reimagine the way that real estate is thought of and utilized, and I think that needs to be part and parcel of the discussion. Just one final thought. Chin Tong spoke about how we need to share more of the resources between federal and state. And this goes back to the trust building issue. And I go back to the real estate play here. Why not propose a model whereby you have a LRT connecting the RTS in JB all the way to Forest City as an alternative to the high-speed rail. And as a model of funding that extension, which would be 20 to 30 kilometers long, do some sort of agreement between federal and state, whereby if, let's say, the value of those properties are enhanced, some of that premium can be used to fund the construction of the LRT. Then federal government can see, hey, the state is chipping in, and then the state government is saying, hey, we can work together with the federal government to see how this can be actualized. And it's very important, if let's say this plan were to be put on the table, it has to be done in a transparent manner, so that there's confidence on federal as well as state government side, and even on the Singapore side, that this can be a value-added proposition, not just for the real estate play, but for some of these larger spillover effects that Francis and I have talked about.
Thank you, Gan Ming. Now I know why most number of residential investments are coming up in Johor. Yesterday's news in the Star. Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Chua.
I mean, it's clear that Iskandar was just a property play, but I think when you go visit the Medini, you just don't have that. What stands up to me, there's no critical population mass base to even kick off the area. And if the ambition is to really strive to attract the control towers, the financial sector to move in, it's kind of obvious to me that you need to be a bit more open to foreigners coming into the area. And I think what stands out is that there's no visa scheme in the current makeup anyway to allow residents, whether Singaporeans or foreign nationals, to be living there, but perhaps working in Singapore, right? Paying taxes where the work is incurred. The person could be working in Iskandar or Malaysia as well, and then you just pay the income tax accordingly. But from what I see from the structured visa schemes, that's currently not possible. You actually have to put in a lot of money, or my second home scheme is really purely for retirement. So if you really want to, and that's where Singapore has been successful, right? It's been pretty open to foreign talent, and you want to really move up to the higher value-added services industries, you really have to make it a lot more flexible. Probably a critical population base of 50 to 100,000, and then the rest will flow in. You know, companies will come, they will generate jobs, and then the case for building the transport infrastructure to link will be all the more compelling. But I think you got to allow for that population to grow and the talent of skills to grow. And also vice versa, Malaysians who are based in Singapore might be more comfortable than also living in Iskandar.
Thank you, Dr. Chua. But I have a follow-through for you. Another question, just changing the order a little bit. What type of benchmark or model for economic collaboration could you see that we can learn from the past and apply in the new special economic zone? For the broader, I think particularly on the back of Malaysia becoming chair for ASEAN in 2025. Okay, up to you.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sure. We've talked about Hong Kong and Shenzhen quite a bit. And I think that is a good model especially for Western reporters that want to understand the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone. But I think we can actually move beyond that, in the sense that we are different from Shenzhen, Hong Kong, in that we're talking about two sovereign nations with their own strengths and capabilities. And we're talking about the close relationship that we can have between the federal government in Malaysia together with the state government. And if, let's say, listening to Chin Tong and others that have quite a lot of creative ideas on this is where we can really use this as some sort of a takeoff point into putting frameworks that we want to see happen in this Johor Special Economic Zone, Singapore Special Economic Zone, and then put that into the agenda on ASEAN. So people mobility, for example, that's something that we talk a lot about in ASEAN. I've been in Chin Tong's position before, trying to understand the ASEAN appetite for these kinds of things. It's not a very fruitful discussion to have. But if, let's say, we can show that Malaysia and Singapore can do that passport-free travel together with very liberal visa policies in a way that's secure for both nations, others would want to come into the picture as well. If, let's say, we have these kinds of special investment zones or industrial parks that involve both countries, others may want to use that example as well. I mean, Singapore has developed the Singapore-Vietnam Industrial Park quite some time ago, and they are the beneficiaries of some of the FDI that have come into northern Vietnam as a result of the US-China tensions. Why not have these kinds of good models that we can use within the context of the ASEAN discussion?
Got it. So very clearly, people mobility is going to be key to help, drive this special economic zone. Dr. Francis.
Just to say that if you read the ASEAN agreements way down in one of the annex, there is actually quite a lot of work on growth triangles and on subnational cooperation between Malaysia and Thailand, between Malaysia, Singapore and Indonesia, as well as between Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and then also there's some discussion about the Philippines at the subnational level. But I would agree with Ken Ming, let's not get too worried about what the ASEAN framework is. Let's be trailblazers, go ahead first, and then show the way for other parts of ASEAN to follow, rather than wait for or having to try and move ASEAN as a whole community. That's 10 people, better go ahead first and show the way.
Thank you. To Yokhui, what does this mean to Singapore and about the special economic zone, and how do you see this setting a different stage for Singapore for the world?
I think, of course, the JS-SEZ is very meaningful to Singapore. Coming at a time where I think the global context is changing. Malaysia is our closest neighbor. Johor is even closer, it's next door. So together we are very close on many different levels. One, I think we share the world's busiest checkpoint. I think at peak it was 500,000 crossing. Not the one that Taylor was stuck in, yeah. But at the peak, at one long holiday. We are each other's largest, second largest and third largest trading partner. And a good percentage of the physical trade goes through Johor. And I think the third point is about investment flows. I think just now we spoke a lot about the strengths of Iskandar Malaysia being a manufacturing hub, right? A lot of the competitive strengths is in manufacturing. In fact, in recent years, with the supply chain shifts, right? Economic Development Board. So if you're familiar with this particular entity, they are like MIDA, so they bring in investments into Singapore. But in recent years, they have also facilitated investments into Johor. And some of these investments, they don't invest in Singapore. But, because of various reasons, right, maybe they don't want to site in Singapore, we refer them to Johor. And these investments can range from manufacturing, MagTech, data centers, et cetera, et cetera. These are all quality investments, and it benefits both sides. So I think from that perspective, I think there is a lot of potential where we can work together, and there is something concrete already in the back. And when it comes to manufacturing, I think go back to the point about how Iskandar Malaysia or the wider Johor is growing. I think while manufacturing is the core center, most townships or even industrial parks, be it net zero, smart green, or the traditional industrial parks, are actually a concept of work, live, and play. Take, for example, our industrial park in Suzhou. It has developed for 30 years, and at the start is focused on a few plants, like Samsung plant, etc. But subsequently, there was a township that grew around it, right, for the workers, for the investors, for the talents that are coming in. Of course, we don't have to start from scratch. All these facilities are already available in Johor as well as in Singapore. Now the question is, with flows coming in, how can we better position ourselves? If we collaborate together, probably we can sell our competitive advantage together and anchor the investments. Of course, we can all do so on our own, right? MIDA can do so on their own, AEB can do so on our own, but we don't have the best of both sides to offer to the investors, and it won't be sticky for any one of us. Foreign investments will move anytime, right? And I would say with BEPS coming onshore, tax incentives will be the least to keep the investors grounded. Right? They will be looking at other aspects, like for example, talent. They'll be looking at other aspects in terms of how fast or how efficient the system is to able to facilitate them. And also the wider ecosystem available. Are my suppliers here, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we do have a lot of things in play. And I think this also probably give rise to the thesis of why we focus a lot on the flow part, right? Because the infrastructure and facilities are more or less available on both sides. So we need the parts to flow. And as it is now, a lot of the factories, they're operating on both sides. They don't just manufacture in Johor and then export out, or they don't just manufacture in Singapore and export out. Actually, the fact is that the parts flow from each of the plant to one another, right? Then after that, the final product will be exported via Johor or via Singapore, depending on where the businesses find it the most convenient or most expedient. So I think some maybe will be asking, so what's the difference, right, between all these ASEAN FTAs that we have, and what is so different about this SEZ? I think SEZ contributes to the whole wider ASEAN economic community framework, but I think what is different here is that we are doing something. Yeah, and there is a practical project in play here. And FTAs usually will solve or address border issues, right? Like for example, tariff concessions, what is our commitment to one another. But at the JS-SEZ, we are probably addressing and hope to address behind the border issues. Non-trade barrier, tariff, non-trade barriers that we're looking at. And in fact, some of these early initiatives that has been announced, a lot of it are not your typical FTA items. They are not FTA-able in that sense, right? So your passport-free QR code clearance, I don't think you can find it under the ASEAN context at this point in time. And all these are mini building blocks, possible, to see if we can actually replicate to a wider place. But we start from between us first, yeah.
I had a meeting sometime back with EDB, just on a separate note. After the meeting was done, there was about 8 or 9 of them, and then before stepping out, I just asked, how many of you were Malaysians? and 7 out of them lifted their hand. So I think there is an EDB-MIDA kind of collaboration that needs to be done. You know, there's, of course, there's a lot of channels happening, but more focus on that. Dr. Chua.
Yeah, I'm just adding on. I mean, because I'm an economist, I guess I cover Singapore economy as well. And it's very clear that the costs have been rising. And you know, when you just cross the border, the commercial rents or the cost and industrial space is like 80% lower. And noticeably, some of the smaller companies, especially the Japanese companies, seems to be shutting down the factories. I think manufacturing-wise, Panasonic, Epson, and so on and so on. But you know, rather than losing it all out and then shifting back to Vietnam, I think there's a case to be made that if some of the operations of investments could go to Johor and maybe some parts still retained in Singapore, that's a more compelling case of collaboration. And all the more in light of the US-China rivalry and the movement of supply chains. Yeah, just to add on.
Thank you. Before I go to the delegates' question, I have one more. We were talking about the different corporate segments, the trade segments, the fund, flow between both, the mobility of people going through. There's a lot of investments happening. Like for Johor right now, on top of it is, of course, apart from property, is data centers, is business services, it's the sustainability initiatives, and the manufacturing. I like you highlighted, let's revisit that, reimagine the new automated advanced manufacturing. What about the conduit to this, the SMEs? How do we bridge them between both nations as part of this initiative? Your thoughts?
Okay, so I think when we look at the way Johor works, I've mentioned you have this hub and spoke model. So when you visit Johor, you can see that there are a lot of very interesting tasks that are being carried out, but they're behind closed doors. So you don't see kind of this rich culture of innovation where you have people moving between firms, you have dynamic startups emerging, growing, perhaps collapsing. It tends to be quite MNC focused. So things that we can think about are doing is, even from basic things, have a directory of all MNCs, all SMEs in the state, what sectors are they in? And then therefore, when you have people that come on board, then they have an idea of where they can source parts and supplies from. The other thing that is necessary is, of course, lots of follow-up. So once you have someone that comes in, it could be an MNC, but what is an MNC? You have different sizes. It could be a German-based firm that is actually owned by a family, but that still employs 300, 400, 500 people. But you visit them periodically. Yes, thank you very much for investing. You are engaged in this type of manufacture. What do you need now? And it's not just what incentives, but also what skilled workers do you need? What sorts of parts and supplies do you need? And oh, by the way, you know what? I can introduce you to some people. So the type of people I think we need for the ecosystem are not people that are dressed nicely with suits and ties. They need to be people that are prepared to get grease under their fingers and go out and visit small and medium enterprises wherever they are to really kind of begin to build a situation where you can have more communication. So the good news is that this is not about more money. The bad news is it takes a lot of work and it's unglamorous work. You have to work with your government officials and really kind of change. It's not so much how much investment you bring in, it's can you get firms to work together. It also implies technology roadmaps. So really kind of breaking down what sectors are you involved in, what are the steps in the value chain, where in Johor do we have firms, and where are we missing capabilities in these sectors, and can we go and try and find them? So a lot more follow-up in this area I think would really help move the locally based economy in this sort of more agglomeration economy, spillover, and dynamism.
Yeah, so just to add on to what Francis said, I think I've said this in publicly before in press statements and in other occasions. To activate or facilitate one of the some of what Francis has talked about just now, it may be worth considering having something akin to a chamber of commerce. Right, we have representatives from chambers of commerce here, from the European chambers of commerce here in Malaysia, and probably a few other places. I myself, I'm a board member of the Danish Chamber of Commerce and also the advisor to the Malaysia-China Chamber of Commerce. For the longest time, and even up to now, I still don't quite understand why there is no Malaysia-Singapore Chamber of Commerce, for example, representing Malaysian business interests, including the SME interests in Singapore. Similarly, we don't have a Singapore-Malaysia Chamber of Commerce representing Singapore SME interests in Malaysia. We could have something like the Singapore-Johor Chamber of Commerce, trying to get together the different SMEs in those ecosystems that have linkages to Singapore. And that may be a good sort of like a place to get together different industry associations that are in that ecosystem, but they are probably not well organized as a whole. And when you have that kind of infrastructure run well with the right intentions, supported by the right governments and agencies, then that would be that may be a channel to facilitate more SME involvement.
Thank you for that. And I think it reminds me of Majika and Jamaica, right? How seamlessly they operate, Malaysia-Japanese and Japanese-Malaysia. And that means we have to go past the sibling rivalry and make sure that we start putting these industries together, Singapore and Malaysia, Singapore, as part of the... Because when you have the industry come in, they are independent. And they are able to drive growth through many forms as part of it. Okay, now I've been just reminded, we have 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask if there was a quick win, maybe 1 or 2 quick wins. We have to be timeline-wise in the next 12 months. What would that be that you would like to see happen? You want to go ahead? Sure.
Yeah, in the interest of time.
Thank you.
Well, I think passport-free QR code clearance can be a quick win. It has already been piloted. Soon
Anybody from KDN here? Just making sure you take note of this request coming in. Of course, YB will take care of it in the parliament. But we want to make sure that it's putting up a record request coming in from Singapore. I think mutual, right?
Mutual. Cannot go there then, yeah.
Then you get stuck there. Huh?
Cannot, yeah. So I think the second wish list, I think, to enable, I think, the businesses' interest. I think it's not just a game for MNCs. It's also how SMEs on both sides can work together. I think a one-stop service center for business approvals and how we can streamline all these processes will be very useful, especially for the smaller and medium-sized enterprises, right? I mean, the MNCs, usually you have people in suit, and ties, waiting out for them, but I think SMEs need more support.
I think we'll lose the ties. And we'll have one in from Johor side and one in Singapore side, right? Both of these.
Yeah. And I think at the government level, we definitely hope to work towards the agreement quite soon, hopefully in the course of the year. And hopefully we'll have good news for everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of quick wins, just look at the 7 points that were in the joint MTI and also MEA statement following the signing of the MOU on the 11th of January 2024, including the one-stop center and passport-free travel, investment facilitation and whatnot. I would, again, use my hat to say things that are gently provocative. I would say in the lead-up to the unveiling and the signing of the MOA between the two leaders at the next leaders' retreat, which will take place, I think, sometime in September, October, with a new Prime Minister in Singapore. If it would be good if, let's say, there could be some ministerial, engagements that could be tied in together with the SEZ beyond the current kind of ministerial engagements, and be able to use those kinds of ministerial engagements between Ministry of Home Affairs, for example, on both sides, Ministry of Transport on both sides, MITI and MTI on both sides, to then populate the MOA with certain key points and facilitate the discussion between Rafizi and also Gan Kim Yong on the Singapore side, so that there already can be some socialization of some of these concepts, including joint investment pitches, for example. And I think the faster we get some of these things out there, in the public in terms of socialization and also communicated between Malaysia and Singapore, then that can be put into our respective budgets. I understand that the Singapore budget cycle is a little bit different. The proposals have to go in quite soon, I think either by July or by August, whereas for us, it's a little bit later. So if let's say that can be aligned, I think that's also a quick win that we can do on the administrative side. Again, going back to the issue of trust building.
Dr. Francis.
I completely agree with what our two speakers here have said, so I will use my 30 seconds to say something else. I would like to say two things. So the first is, I talked about how you had this nice complementarity between the logistics sector and this Netherlands Maritime Institute of Technology. I think more can be done with regards to electrical engineering in Johor. So you have UTM that is very good. Actually, I just 2 weeks ago met the head of Intel Penang, and she is herself a UTM graduate. But when we come to EduCity, you don't see a lot of focus on electrical engineering. Actually, the focus you see there is on automotive engineering. And Johor doesn't make cars. All of this action takes place in Selangor. So I would like to make a pitch for, if there are going to be more engineering programs, these should be hosted, number one. And number two, let's look at what we want to do. And the future, I think in the short future, is electrical engineering. Let's focus on that. The second point concerns the HSR. So I actually like Kian Ming's idea of an LRT. I think it would be more accessible and very interesting. So I will not take a point on whether the HSR is good or bad, but what I will say is if it is going to be set up, there is an additional use that no one has yet talked about. And that is actually using the high-speed rail to move high value-added cargo. And this is actually already being done in Japan. The Shinkansens, they don't add any additional infrastructure. They actually bring in on gurneys and trolleys computer chips, ornamental flowers, fish, and they actually use the HSR or the Shinkansen for that purpose. Now, we've heard from YB Liu, looking forward, yes, we've got Penang and Kulim, we've got KL, we've got JB, and you've got Singapore. What better use of an HSR than to link the electronics and manufacturing sectors between KL, JB, and Singapore with something that is reliable, efficient, and actually well-suited for transporting small, high-value-added components. So thank you. I must apologize. I talked about something else.
It's okay, thanks. Dr. Chua?
Yeah, I guess I speak to a lot of the fund managers and the markets. So what they would like to see is Khazanah and Temasek comes up with a big fund, 30, 50 billion, and commit to that investment to develop the special economic zone. Or Capital Land and Sunrise comes up with another big investment in the area, right? Just like Technosa Jaya. Or my second home, a concessionary scheme for Singaporeans with lower income requirements and all that to live and retire in Iskandar, but perhaps with flexibility with some kind of part-time work. Or like Penang, cut the stamp duty on property or lower the threshold for buying Johor property for Singaporeans. Those will be quick wins, but obviously with concessions required on the part of the government.
Thank you, Dr. Chua. So basically, from the start point where we talked about the mobility, location, incentive, we have addressed all aspects of it, a set of data-driven, demand-driven input has been given. But one thing runs across common. It's a link of having to have the government working together, and the state from our side and the other side. Agencies able to work together in an integrated manner. Industry being able to work together in an integrated manner. Looks like a lot more. Academia able to work together in terms of exchange of talent, parity of recognition of programs and so on. It's a lot more to think about. And also socially, from a society perspective, how do we bridge this as well? So it's a lot of lists here, but I think there are some priorities that we need to work towards, and the year one priorities have been dished out by our panel today. And with that, I think as we go with this dialogue and conversations together, hopefully the next one in Singapore and the one after that in Johor, we'll be able to make sure that we make it concrete. So with that, please give a round of applause to our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, panelists, for the engaging discussion. Please remain on stage for photo taking. Thank you. For our next panel discussion, we'll be exploring the critical role of the infrastructure development in laying the groundwork for economic success. And if you have any questions for our panelists, please visit slido.com and enter the code JC2024 to submit your questions. May I invite our moderator for this panel, Dr. Muhammad Najib Razali, Director, Real Estate, Faculty of Built Environment and Surveying from University Technology Malaysia, to introduce the rest of the distinguished panelists. Please welcome Dr. Najib.
Thank you very much, MC, and I would like to invite all the panels to the stage. I think we should start as soon as possible because we are running out of time. Okay, I would like to introduce all the panels, or our distinguished panels today, because we are going to discuss the most, I think, one of the fundamental area in our effort to develop the JS-SEZ. So the first panel is Yang Berhormat Dr. Haji Muhammad Nur Azam Osman, Mayor Johor Bahru City Council. Thank you, Datuk. The second one, our speaker is Mr. Saiful Azlan Ismail, Director Strategic Change Management Office and My Center for IR Energy Transition, My Digital. Thank you. The third one is Mr. Muaz Abdul Syukur, Chief Strategy Officer, JLN Group. And our panel of speaker is Mr. Tay Kok Chin, Chairman Smart Cities Network, Executive Director, ASEAN Smart Cities Council, SCC Singapore, from Singapore. Thank you very much for all speaking. So I will directly ask the question direct to the panel because we are running out of time. Try to make it short and precise. Okay, the first one, this is our session will discuss on the infrastructure development, building the foundation for economic success. I believe this is one of the fundamental areas where all parties should cooperate and collaborate together to ensure this is just not the conversation but also can become into reality. So we need to work hand in hand together, all parties. That's why we have all the panelists come from various backgrounds and from various parties. So the first one, so I'd like to ask Yang Berhormat Datuk, as a mayor of Johor Bahru City Council. So with the current spotlight of RTS and JS-SEZ, can you share the latest development in Johor Bahru and how MBJB is gearing up to reap the benefits of these developments? Bagi Datuk, Yang Berhormat Datuk.
First of all, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Very good morning. Thank you for actually giving me this special appearance as a speaker, as one of the panelists for this very important thing that's going to happen in the south of Johor. And I wish to imagine 100 years ago, we could have had this Johor conversation with the causeway being the game changer for Johor 100 years ago. Because now we are talking about RTS, which is another connection between Malaysia, Johor, and Singapore. As we know that if you look at naturally Malaysia is like the peninsula, which is the ends of Asia, and it appears to be like a dragon, where Johor Bahru is the head of the dragon, and Singapore being the Dragon Ball. And connected by that connectivity, which we call the causeway, and now we're adding more to get the whatever energy and whatever prosperity that comes out of Singapore through this RTS. So this is naturally not new. We have been closely as a neighbor. We got relatives across, and I think by adding on this RTS and SEZ, we'll add more action into the domestic economic scenario of South Johor. And being the mayor of Johor Bahru, I'm the gatekeeper. But I should not be selfish, because when you talk, I agree with what Liu Ching Tong just now, that south of Johor or the greater Johor Bahru area, there are several gateways that needs to be enhanced. If you look at, we have the second link in the west, we have causeway, we have 2 ports, I mean 3 ports, Tanjung Lansat, Pasir Gudang, and also PTP, and we have an airport, which is considered to be, to me, we should be enhancing more the role of Senai Airport. And we also have private jetties, which should actually connect between Singapore and Johor, and as well as Batam. We're talking the Sijori concept. And I was at the table just now. We've been talking about maybe a second RTS, if there is a plan. Because there were some good points being tabled up by Professor Ong Kian Meng, saying how do you connect the east to the west, Forest City to the city center. There was this plan that was done many years back, which puts Kempas as the grand central station of Johor Bahru, which should intersect between the east and west, connecting Pasir Gudang to PTP, as well as connecting, now we have the double tracking, which is going to be ready by end of this year, and a commuter service being announced to start by next year. And with RTS being there in the end of 2026, we really need very much a dispersal system which connects all these gateway, all these important, located, designated investment areas, and creating more new urban township for Johor Bahru. So that is, to me, key and very important, and should be exciting if we can do this, and making this region, this SEZ, the southern region, looking on the context of it being the market to 500 million people around Asia, I would say that this is the best place to stay, and my job as a mayor is to make it more livable. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Berhormat Datuk. So I believe in the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, there are several council that need work together instead of Johor Bahru itself, Pasir Gudang, as well as Iskandar Puteri. So I believe all these three councils must work in hand together. So the next question about the infrastructure that I would like to ask Mr. Saiful Azlan, the Director of Strategic Change Management Office, and my Center for IR Energy Transition, My Digital, right? So the question is, just now we heard about the state level, but now at the federal level, what kind of infrastructure development blueprints that we need to focus on, and at the Johor, and how can Johor and SEZ can benefit from these blueprints?
Okay, thank you for the question, and thank you to Gov Insider and Jacob for inviting me to this event. So, just to give a bit of context in terms of what My Digital Corporation does. In 2021, two blueprints were released: the Malaysian Digital Economic Blueprint and the National 4IR Policy. Both of these documents outline a timeline and initiatives that runs till 2030 to basically improve upon the digitalization of Malaysia. One of the key pillars of this blueprint is on digital infrastructure and data. And within those areas, we focus on some of the key initiatives within there is 5G connectivity, data center development, as well as submarine cables, so that we can continue to deliver high-end quality services to the country. Now, at the moment, we've seen heavy investment within data centers in Johor, and I would say one of the critical infrastructures that we need to focus on as a nation to take advantage of the next wave of technology, which is AI. Malaysia, we've talked a lot about second chances today, and the real second chance for Malaysia, on top of all the other great infrastructure developments, is that we have the opportunity to build purpose-built data centers geared towards AI. And what this means is that we can develop something that's really prepared for the future, and also build the talent that we need to move in that direction for AI, as well as the entire ecosystem. So from the federal side, the areas that we focus on to deliver 5G, data centers, and submarine cables, because these are areas that will help to build these data centers. So this is also where there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration with Singapore as well. Singapore, at the moment, just does not have any more space for data centers. So there's an opportunity for us to work with Singapore to bring in further investment in data centers, to work with them to push their needs of data centers into our areas as well, especially looking at Sedana as a potential area for data center development. And this is how the federal government will continue to assist. The digital infrastructure and data sector cluster of our blueprint is critical to ensure that we get this right.
Thank you, Mr. Saiful Azlan. As academician myself, when we did many research as academics, but at the end of the day, and when we have a research output, it's back to the governance actually. It's always governance. So I believe from federal to the state, it must have collaborate, work together in harmony, and think always about the people, because the benefit the community will get the benefit eventually. Okay. Now I would like to ask the question to our one of the main GLC in Johor, the state of Johor, GLG, to Mr. Muaz. So, in terms of, from the perspective of JLN Group, okay, what are the strategies being implemented that we complement the development of special economic zone from land and innovation aspects? Because we know this economic zone is not a new thing. It's like at the previous session has been discussed. Okay. The floor is yours, Mr. Azlan. Sorry, Mr. Muaz.
Okay, so I think we are looking at this development very with great excitement, right? We see it as the economic integration between the two countries and definitely will benefit the region. So as a group, just to update, I think maybe most of us, well, we are new in the market, right? JLG as an integrated real estate player was launched in the market. We announced ourselves in January last year. So the areas of businesses that we are in within the integrated real estate will be in the development side, with residential, commercial, and industrial properties. We have our IFM business, we have our investment business, as well as the new division that we are creating will be the infratech business. Yeah? So I guess if we're talking about the strategies that we are focused on today, it's firstly about integrating these businesses, whether it's the operating systems, the group customer view, so that we can offer comprehensive services to our customers that's coming. Obviously, there's a lot of improvements that we're doing in capabilities, building new capabilities, digitalizing the business, as well as encouraging more innovation across our teams. Yeah? We are starting to use big data and looking at, for example, data sets involving demographics, people movement, as well as economic activities to refine our strategies on our developments, like IPTEC, yeah, and IIBD. Also exploring digital twin technologies for us to look at development, right, connecting with partners and vendors, as well as also use the data for us to look at the next stage, which is the operations and the management of those facilities. Yeah. There's quite also, a few also improvements that we are seeing in our product development. On the residential markets, we are already offering sustainably designed homes that's integrated with smart home facilities. You know, also offering renewable energy options like solar, EV charging ports. On the industrial side, you know, we've talked about data centers. So, you know, there are urgent requirements for fiber connectivity, for renewable energy, especially. As a response, you know, we've already operationalized our JLG Infratech, which are looking at areas of fiberization, renewable energy, as well as water, because these are very important requirements. I think those are the key strategies, but for us to realize all this, right, there's lots of opportunities, and we see a lot of growth areas within our flagship developments. The way that we are approaching it is partnerships. Yeah? So of course we are very thankful to the state and federal government agencies and ministries for the strong support. We're also continuing to develop partnerships with capability and solutions partners. So for example, we are working with RE players like Synergy, Gentari, Sols, even before, to look at solar, to look at EV charging ports for our assets. And we're also going to grow the ecosystem, hopefully, yeah? When we see the requirements of the future customers, that's going to be coming from the gateway, yeah? So Singapore we see as a gateway to not just Singaporean, but also the international market coming into our areas. It's also about looking at capabilities on applications and services layers on top of the infrastructure that we set up. Right? So for example, if you're looking at residential customers, the smart home solutions, there's energy efficient appliances that they could require. Right? So this is beyond our traditional physical products. It's complementing our physical assets. Yeah? If you look at the data center players, for example, they have requirements, again, in ESG compliance, of course, in operational efficiencies. So these, again, you know, partnerships that we want to strike so that we can offer comprehensive solutions just on top of our physical assets. Yeah? So with that, you know, I think just to round up, I think we have lots of opportunities for growth within our flagship developments. And, you know, to anyone, our friends in the room, we're happy to discuss exploring these opportunities.
Yeah, I believe there's lots of opportunity with this new incentive and the new, what do you call it, the more policies, because I believe there is some connection between JLG itself, because you are dealing with land which under the jurisdiction of the states, okay, and then the policy on the recent technology, which blockchain, AI, and big data also can play a big role and significant role. Now maybe we can have a view from our neighbors' perspective, Mr. Tay, can you share about the digitally twin smart cities framework that can be implemented that could benefit in our state of Johor? Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. Before I answer your question, let me explain a bit about the background of where I come from, right? So, I am from Singapore right now. But I was born Johorian. All right. So this Singapore-Johor partnership is close to my heart personally. Now, the digitally twin smart cities puts a different perspective to infrastructure development that is digital, which means that Johor's development and economic development actually goes beyond Singapore. Because to be digital, you connect to the world. So I look at digitally twin smart cities is a concept that I wrote an article to connect cities and the residencies in West Java, to connect 5 regencies and cities to Bandung. That was in 2019. So now, of course, with Mayor Noruzam, who was with me 2 weeks ago in Singapore, we're going to extend that to Johor. And our partnership, hopefully in time, will be with the Johor Economic, Tourism and Cultural Office, JETCO, whom I had the privilege to meet with the chairman twice. So the digitally twin smart cities is now an extension, an international extension of the concept of linking up Johor together with Singapore to the world. What does it mean? First, there will be different levels of development. First, you must have stakeholders, a task force willing to connect. And I like what Professor Ong said. You must have trust. To build global partnership, you must have trust. Secondly, you must develop innovation. And that's why the partnership with Johor will be about how do you drive innovation as part and parcel of our partnership built upon trust. And thirdly, we want to showcase what we're going to do. So the digitally twin smart cities is right now in its early stage of conception. We would like to see how, through the branding of Singapore worldwide, that we will also mention Johor as an extension of the greater Johor partnership with Singapore. Because Johor will never be represented internationally, because Malaysia is a country. So through Singapore, I hope in time to come, through our network in ASEAN, and our network is really global. I represent Smart Cities Council, the world's largest ecosystem of stakeholders on smart cities. And I will certainly hope to realize perhaps the net zero industrial park in Johor. So that will be my take of it. It's really an international extension to a concept that was developed 5 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tate. So I believe there will be a spillover effect from the smart city that being developed in Singapore together with in Johor. Like mentioned in the first session just now by Dr. Hutchinson, we have my university, University Technology Malaysia, that have a lots of smart cities research. We've been, being awarded by the federal government, actually, the research grant. So maybe, yeah, we can exchange the knowledge, especially not just being on the physical development infrastructure itself, but also the knowledge itself. Okay. Then I would like to bring back the question to the Yang Berhormat Datuk, our mayor, and because under this initiative JS-SEZ, because we have so many 16 economic sectors expected to give the economic spillovers to the people, okay, to the communities, especially in the region area. So, say for example, electronic, medical, pharmaceutical, aviation, chemical, logistic, healthcare, agricultural technology, creative industry, halal industry, and manufacturing. Can you share, Yang Berhormat Datuk, that in the short term and long term plans, how can Johor Bahru City Council can support all these sectors? Muhammad Datuk.
Thank you, Doctor. First of all, I think the ease of doing business is key in encouraging investments to happen in Johor. And we have come together as all the 4 local authorities in the Greater JB area to actually establish the JB Fast Lane, which actually, number one, there's a short-term initiative to expedite and facilitate approvals, which normally takes 99 to more than 100 days to approve for investment to a period of not more than 30 days. This is the commitment that we have actually done and given up to the level of issuance of the business license. But all that is all subject to the applicants fulfilling the proper forms and application for us to actually expedite and approve. And that's the short-term part. I think when we talk about 16 sectors, we cannot run away from talking about data centers. And we know that people are too hyped about data centers in the JS-SEZ, but I'll be very open and I'll be very open to say that in my area, Johor Bahru, we only have 2 proposals being put in. Our main issue for data centers is the issue of power and water. And I would like to see in the long term, if really data centers becomes the enabler for robotics, for AI industries, we should actually look at whether it's private or public partnership or the government themselves, focusing into the issue of putting up these salination plants for cooling purpose for industrial needs, as well as looking at possible industrial park developers to actually do cogen plants to further enhance and provide the need for this kind of industries. And I would agree with Dr. Francis just now, mentioning that during the Iskandar time, manufacturing is key. And I think those infrastructures for manufacturing in JB is there. And I have, in my area itself, for Johor Bahru, I have another 3,000 acres of undeveloped industrial areas for manufacturing or for industrial park. And it seems that I thought I was the smallest. We are actually bigger than Iskandar Putri in terms of the possible potential for industrial parks. But my only issue is we don't have enough water, we don't have enough power. But areas which can be looked at as potential for powers and water is actually Pasir Gudang and Kulai. But that's beside the point. When we look at really being hyped about promoting investments, to me, as a local authority, it should not be at the expense of the local, at the expense of the domestic needs of the people. Now we have 2.3 million people in the south of Johor, which is in the Greater Johor Bahru area, not including Pengerang and Pontian. But we foresee that with this RTS, there'll be an increase in the population in terms of transient population or people coming from all over Malaysia wanting to reap the benefits of the Johor economy. And at the moment, there's a lot of hype to put in a lot of property developments within 5-kilometer radius of the RTS. I've been getting a lot of, that's good for me actually. I get a lot of revenue for people to ask to do developments in my area. But I would like to see more of these developments being spread out in the Greater Johor Bahru area. And more needs to be done in terms of putting the long-term part is actually the connectivity between these growth centers or the new urban areas. And I am also very happy to know that the government is looking into putting up a new law, it's being called the Urban Redevelopment Law or something, very soon.
Urban sprawl, is it?
Sorry?
Urban sprawl.
No, it's re-urbanization.
Urban regeneration.
Urban rejuvenation, yes. That's the new act that is coming up. Because I think JB is not a greenfield. We need to relocate, we need to restructure back the city itself. JB is an old city. 100 years ago, we got the causeway. JB is about 170 years and used to be called Iskandar Putri, not Johor Bahru, actually. And we know that there's three main rivers around in Johor Bahru. Because if you want to go for JS-SEZ, you're talking about making the whole of that JS-SEZ more livable, sustainable, and green. And I would say that we need to look at how do you reorganize back this to make sure that with this reurbanization act coming in, my role as a local authority, I can actually have more power and more understanding, especially the trust issue with federal and state government to actually restructure back. And this is what Singapore did 30 years ago. I was very impressed to see that the Singapore River was transformed within 10 to 15 years to become Marina Bay. And so we have 3 rivers in JB, 3 main rivers, Sungai Skudai, Sungai Tebrau, and of course the famous Sungai Segit. But that Sungai Segit is very small. But most important is Sungai Tebrau and Sungai Skudai, and along those areas there are potential also areas for development and for people to stay. And these are to me things that we need to look at how to address these issues short term and long term, and everyone needs to come together. We don't want this to become a hype, a big property play like what this hype became when Iskandar was announced. And there was a big glut as well. And I still got people not paying their assessment rates to me since the glut, since the COVID times, and we know that it's not something sustainable. We need to further expand, and this is where this concept of working together between the local authorities is key. You see, if I combine my revenue together with Iskandar Putri, together with Kulai and Pasir Gudang, easily we will collect more than 1.5 billion revenue. And that's a lot of money if we plan together and do a lot of savings, and a lot of effort can be put into the infrastructure and also putting in the right ingredients to make JS-SEZ a success. So that will be my take on this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Berhormat Datuk. So I could summarize that the several keywords from here is to ensure that all these sectors are successful being implemented. Is the ease to do business, and also the other two the prerequisite of the infrastructure is water and energy itself. So that means we need to think something innovation to solve these two major utilities, energy and water. So the next question that maybe from the many opportunities of the 16 sectors in Johor Bahru itself, okay, maybe I could ask Mr. Saiful Azlan, because the SEZ begins to take a root. So how do you think about the opportunity in terms of investment to Johor? So what are the investment actually?
So thank you. So in terms of investment into Johor, on that question, I don't think I have the right view to look at that from an investment perspective. From a digital perspective, though, when we're looking at what Johor can reap in terms of investments, is within the different tech plays that's happening within the region and globally. When I refer to that, I refer to again data centers, yes, but also the wider ecosystem that can take advantage of that. There's the whole point is, at least we don't want to build a just data centers for the sake of building it. And what happens is our local talent or our Malaysians just end up running data centers. There's no value within that. But if we can bring in investments that can help to uplift the entire value chain from data centers straight through to the companies that maintain the data centers, but then also to the research and development into new AI frontiers and technologies, and actually upskilling Malaysians in this regard within that space. These are the investments that I am much more interested in. And that is something that I think we need to keep an eye on as well, because as Dato said as well, it's for Johorians as well as Malaysians. We don't just want to short sedirilah and just build all these things, but we don't prepare our people for this as well.
Yeah. I think that's the role of human capital itself. To our institution, universities, polytechnic, other education institutions need to play a role in order to prepare the people itself to get ready of the new technologies such as AI and everything. Okay? And then the next question, may I ask Mr. Muaz? So in the next 5 coming years, again, we're talking about future. Okay, what the development that we can witness in order to ensure the success of this special economic zone in Johor, and how can actually benefit both Singapore and Johor itself?
Okay, I think in the next 5 years, when we see the SEZ realized, right? So we are imagining the RTS is online, and we see the CIQ, all the main infrastructure to facilitate the movement of people is already in place. I think what's interesting, and to echo Yang Muhammad, Dato' Mia's statement just now, right? I think the CBD is going to be transformed, right? If you imagine there'll be a more international crowd coming through the gateway from Singapore and beyond, what would the landscape look like? Yeah. So what kind of CBD can be envisioned to make it more conducive? Right, to encourage innovation, to encourage world-class events, as mentioned just now, to bring in more creative arts and heritage activities. Yeah, I also heard just now that we were talking about content. Yeah, so what's important in a real estate play is not just about the physical aspects of it, but also the content within it. Right? How do you also implement placemaking activities to make sure that the community there thrives. Yeah. So this is in relation to a project that we're working on with MPJB right now, which is the Iskandar International Business District. Sorry, Ibrahim International Business District. I apologize. Which is IIBD. Yeah. So this is the zone 240 acres CBD area, which is right opposite the CIQ and the RTS. So it's a rejuvenation project that we are taking to basically design spaces and clusters that suits different activities, as mentioned earlier. It's also going to involve the rejuvenation of the city, the facilities, probably looking at refreshing the commercial space to benefit the local businesses, as well as bring in more global brands, right, for the market that is to come. So this is one, I think, that we are hoping to announce. We'll be launching it, inshallah, announcements sometime later this year. But yeah, I think on top of that, besides that, I think the spillover effects, I think, is what we want to look forward to as well, right? With the growth of investments, with the growth of new businesses and sectors into Johor, I think the ecosystem will benefit. One, we talked about talent, right? But also the ecosystem that supports the local businesses and SMEs. That would be, I think, what we look forward to.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe in 5 next years, we have many anticipation. We want to Johor to look better and then we like to work close together with Singapore. So I just watched the AI movie last 2 days. The actress is Jennifer Lopez. So in 5 years' time, there will be lots of drones and droid and kereta terbang as usual. When we think about the future, it's always kereta terbang. So maybe we can become more practical, not just dreaming about the kereta terbang or flying cars, but also at the fundamental aspect like how we can create in terms to close the gap of wealth actually, because it will give benefit to the community itself, because the community needs to be happy living in Johor Bahru. Okay, then maybe I would like to ask Mr. Tay from the Singaporean point of view in terms of digital infrastructure. As we can see, Singapore is very successful in terms of digital infrastructures. Okay, that they need to place that can make JB as a smart hub of a success in terms of everything ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay, so the smart hub concept is really at the city level of the digitally twin smart cities. So the number one condition for any city to be smart is that the state and the national government must first decide that smart city is an important development strategy. That's number one. So when Singapore ex-Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong launched Smart Nation in August, or not launched, but rather announced Smart Nation in August 2014, 10 years ago, he showed the Rio de Janeiro Operations Center. All right, I was with IBM at that time. It was an IBM showcase. So last week, I had the privilege of visiting Johor. I met with the Plan Malaysia Johor and also was hosted by the Johor Bahru Integrated Operations Center. I was impressed on two fronts. First, Plan Malaysia Johor has a plan for Smart Johor whereby they will create a Johor Urban Observatory. And that in itself, having visibility to all of Johor is a smart hub by Plan Malaysia Johor. Second, the Johor Bahru Command Center, the integrated JBIOCC, is to provide situation awareness of the whole of Johor Bahru. And I hope it will be extended to Greater Johor, Johor Bahru. And that provides situation awareness. What should it do? So the Smart Hub should achieve 3 goals. Number one, and for what we intend to do is to attract investment into Johor. So first, it must have pockets of area where investments are to be attracted, number one. Number two, it should provide safety and security for the entire city. Thirdly, it must provide the opportunity for businesses to leverage off that GIS capable platform, whereby they will deliver value to their customers and to other businesses and to other people worldwide. So the Smart Hub is a center of excellence whereby Johor Bahru will have a chance to attract investment from not only Singapore but from the world. So an example, I received an email from the Transition Energy Partners. It's headed by BlackRock. And one example of that, they have a project in America at the moment, 600 over million to $1 billion US investment of transition energy. So the question is, where in Johor can I do that? That is what a Smart Hub is supposed to do. A center of excellence to incubate innovation, to then allow investment to be pumped in, to provide local jobs so that the Johorians will be involved in such opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe there's lots of things and effort need to be ensure that Johor can become more international city, and there is lots of infrastructure that just need to be prepared, not just physically, but also in terms of the plan itself. I would like to take some of the questions from the audiences from Slido. I would like to ask maybe this question to Yang Berhormat Datuk because it's related to the Johor Bahru itself. So this is very interesting. JB Town Centre is a super quiet at night with not many places to chill and wind down. So do you agree with that statement, Datuk?
Okay. I think this is back to this social media postings and viral of JB not being attractive, and there's nothing much about JB being a touristic. I think people should come and experience JB in the first place. And why you see during weekends you have jams, you have people coming through the causeway. My office sits smack at where Singaporeans wants to go back to Singapore. And every Sunday I will try to squeeze my way back home. And I don't see why people say that there's nothing in Johor Bahru. But I do agree that there's a lot of things not in place yet at this time because construction is happening all over Johor Bahru. That part I can agree. But I think when everything is quite ready, JB is not just a border town. JB is not just with this SEZ thing. What we want to see is people to actually come and enjoy and maybe stay, work. As the tagline says, work, live and play in Johor Bahru. And I think looking at Johor Bahru city itself, of course it's an urban center, but there are a lot of attractive places around Greater Johor Bahru and also outskirts of Johor Bahru, which we should actually be looking at. Once you improve the connectivity, you improve the infrastructure, you improve on the digital transformation of the city itself, I believe that people will see more attractive places and more visible of Johor Bahru from in time to come. So have faith, believe, and come to Johor Bahru.
Please come and visit Johor Bahru. Okay, maybe one last question from the audience. I would like to ask Mr. Saiful Azlan because it relates to the data center. So it is said that the data center have very minimal multiplier to economic spillovers, such as low employment opportunities in this data center. Is it true? Is it really true?
So I think that's an interesting point. I mean, when we talk about low employment value, yes. I mean, if you're just looking at the data centers itself, up until the point the data centers are completed, effectively after that, what do you have? Then just a central hub where other people's data really goes through. So maintenance of those data centers probably not high priority. But that's where I mentioned it's a lot more in terms of how we enable those data centers to span out to other startups, SMEs, other companies that can take advantage of these data centers, because the data center itself is not the, I mean, it is valuable, but it is not the economic multiplier that you really need. Now, imagine if we could use these data centers as Malaysia, as the Malaysian government, or the data centers as a private front, to provide GPU run cloud credits for SMEs or for startups in Malaysia, to really incubate their own AI processes. That saves a lot of money for any SME or startup that doesn't have the resources to, use these data centers at the best opportunity for AI development. So this is where you can really pull a lot of value beyond just the building and the throughput of data to the rest of the ecosystem.
Thank you very much. I would like to end the session, and thank you very much to the all panel. I believe there is lots of Malaysia, especially Johor, can offer so many things, and I believe Johor Bahru itself, Datuk Mayor has a big role as a mayor in this very important city, the second city for the Kuala Lumpur, and complement, not rival, but complement to each other because as Malaysia we work together, and also as a JLC for states, JLC, JLG have a very important role, and of course from the technology side, the data center is a big new investment or opportunity, and also we have friends in Singapore that I believe would like to always to help us complement and share the knowledge together with us, not issue. I hope there will more and more discussion and event similar like this in future. Then thank you very much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon.
Thank you, panelists, for the insightful discussions. Please remain on stage for photo taking. Thank you. Let's give them another round of applause. Our third and last panel session for the day is on technology and innovation as cornerstones for Johor economic growth. Join our panelists to uncover the transformative potential of technology and innovation as the key pillars driving Johor's economic growth. By now, you are all expert at this. If you have any questions for our panelists, please hop on to slido.com and key in the code JC2024 and send in those questions to our panelists. Without further ado, may I invite our moderator for this session, Mr. Chee Hong Nor, Director of Corporate Information Center from Help University, to introduce the rest of the esteemed panelists. Please welcome Mr. Chee.
Thank you. May I invite all the panelists to come on stage, please? Okay, today this is the final panel session for the day. I hope that you guys have gained a lot of insights from the previous sessions, and I hope that our panelists will share more insights and everybody will have more information to prepare for the upcoming Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone. Let me introduce my panelists. First, Dato' Noor Azman Hassan. He's from Deputy Secretary General of Technology Development from MOSTI.
Yes, thank you for having us, me, especially having me here, Mr. Chee, and of course Chee, and also the organizer for inviting MOSTI to share some of the insights. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, Encik Muhammad Nazin.
Well, thank you. Greetings from Talent Corp. Thank you for having us. I hope we can share more about JS-SEZ, especially from the perspective of us being the Secretariat for Working Group Talent.
Great. Ms. Kay, she is the founder of Star IIX.
Thank you, Ngo. First of all, I would like to thank GovInsider and Jacob for inviting me to be here as a panelist. So I have actually, I'm a new kid on the block, but I have a perspective from the government and also now industry. So here I am to share my insights actually.
Great, looking forward. And Dr. Andrew Lau, he's from Microsoft.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon everybody. Thanks for having myself and of course representing Microsoft here. So I think we have a tough responsibility. We are in between lunch and this session. So hopefully we can make this a bit lively for you guys, yeah?
Yeah, we have a lot of things to cover with a very short time. So we have to just be very short and precise to the questions. And for the audience, you guys has been reminded, we will take your questions via Slido. And for those questions that is posted, please rate those questions that you would like us most, well, to cover mostly, okay? Which is the most important that you feel that we should cover. Okay, let's go on to the session. I will ask general questions to all the panelists first, before I will shoot the individual questions to each of them. Then we will go to the Slido before another round of general questions being asked. What opportunity do you see arising from the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone? And how does this translate into benefits for Malaysia beyond Johor?
Yeah, thank you. From that general question, I think we, coming from the perspective of technology and innovation, and because technology innovation cuts across many verticals and many stakeholders, and Mosti being one of the members of the the current working group in regards to Iskandar and Johor, Mosti is in charge of the innovation working group. So together with the counterpart, MTI in Singapore. So when it was announced, the Special Economic Zone, a lot of these are actually in line with how we should be able to take advantage of both countries' interests in furthering the application and benefits of utilizing technology and innovation for increasing of economic outputs and outcomes. Now, to take for example, when there is businesses engaged, there could be as impact as the normal small companies, including startups, to as high as a lot of other big potential benefits in terms of cross-border trade. The utilization of applications of technology and innovation is enormous in this regard. So when we talk about startups alone, there are, as you know, Singapore house a lot of potential, world-renowned nowadays anyway, and for startups that has become unicorn in nature, in size. And in Malaysia, we are promoting and we are encouraging and trying facilitating startups to grow as well. And having this, special economic zone, where startups, tech startups, here we're talking about, can actually share and ideas and partners, as well as maybe perhaps talent across borders. So this, and also the other benefit of having this special economic zone, as mentioned just now earlier, where we talk about cross-border trade, for example, then the use of technology in allowing, speedier, so to speak, movement of talents, or if you want to say workforce, then you can use that as well. How do we then encourage the use of applications of technology like customs clearance and immigration clearance and the move of talents across borders? So for example, when both customs department of Singapore and Malaysia has already engaged into one kind of understanding to increase or enhance the way trade between two countries. The use of blockchain technology, for example, can be discussed, where the flow of goods can be tracked, and then the smart contracts between suppliers and exporters and importers can actually be improved further in terms of its security of flow of information, as well as how approvals and processes can be expedited and be surely be covered under that. So a lot of opportunities in this special economic zone when it was announced in regards to, especially when coming from the technology innovation point of view, the applications of those. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds like we can actually use the special economic zone as an ecosystem and to support not only Johor but the entire nation and beyond. Yes.
Well, okay, thank you. From the perspective of talent, basically there are 4 challenges that we have identified at national level. Number 1 is about the creation of jobs. We are talking about creation of skilled jobs. We have around 4 million over 5 years in terms of skilled workers being created. But the availability of jobs is basically 2 million. So that's the first challenge. Second challenge is always about mismatch. And also about industry readiness. I think the last challenge would be about retention, and this is a big issue in Johor. Whenever I go around and meet with manufacturing companies and also, companies per se, they'll be talking about how best can we attract talent and how can actually government assist us in retaining talents. And I think with this SEZ coming, being proposed for Johor, this is one of the ways probably on how best can we create more opportunities and we can address all these challenges. I can see that from the perspective of talent, at least we can see a lot more investments, which will focus more on a high value production model. I think that will be the best way to address the shortage of jobs for those graduates. In Johor, you can see that a lot of them are crossing the border to Singapore. And I spoke with one particular company. They said we have invested a lot in terms of preparing talents from investing in trainings, investing in uniforms, getting all the certifications and all. And the next thing you know, they are in Singapore. So I think by having more jobs being created, especially we need to do away and deviate from just getting investments into Malaysia. We should not just look at the quantity of it, but rather the quality of it. And we are also being guided by the roadmap that the government have introduced, for instance, NIMP. And you can see that from one of the targets under NIMP, we would like to address the low labor force participation rate for women. And I think SEZ could present an opportunity for us to also address that, because we have a lot of women professionals, and they are very able, they are very competent, and they are very less likely to cross the border as compared to their male counterparts. So I think that will be my take on the opportunities. And I think the benefits of it, of course, definitely we can address the talent shortage. And this could also mean we can review our curriculum better. Why? Because we are seeing a lot more investments in new areas. I'm quite certain everyone is pretty much aware of the sectors for SEZ. And you can see that there are potential of additional 6 more sectors being considered. So this is also another opportunity that we are looking at. Probably the new curriculum, and also like UTM, they have just launched their Faculty of AI. That could also present an opportunity to start developing more talents in these new growth areas. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nazib. I think that is a good, very good proposition for the SEZ. Okay, next, Ms. K, what's your take?
Okay, thank you. I think it's inevitable, the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, SEZ, because it's just inevitable. But it presents an collaborative opportunity for both regions, actually, Singapore and Johor, and it will have an indirect impact to Malaysia. Why I say that? Okay, Singapore is worldly recognized for 3 things. First, financial center. Second, innovation hub. Third, clean and green city. So with this collaboration, Singapore should be the financial engine, and Johor should be the extended bay as the scientific technological solution for Southeast Asia. Okay, so therefore we should work together to create industrial solutions transformative solutions for industrial consumption. And working closely with Fraunhofer, IEM, they are the largest research organization in Europe with 3 billion euro budget. What they do is basically they do transfer knowledge, okay, applied research from universities to the industries. So if we replicate that with working with the universities in Singapore and also Johor, bring this state-of-the-art sciences and technology to industries to create new products and solutions, it will increase Malaysia's GDP and thus increase GDP per capita. Currently, Malaysia's GDP per capita is only USD 12,000 and Singapore is 83,000. With this production, you can increase it. That's my take.
Great. I think it's basically we need to work together and put our strengths together to use and not fighting for each other's. Okay, Dr. Andrew.
All right. Obviously, I come from Microsoft, right? Technology company. When we look at the investments that are going down in Johor and the formation of SEZ in Johor, we are certainly very excited. From the digital infrastructure side, the investment actually spurs a huge amount of ecosystems that will benefit Johor and make Johor, in fact, leading possibly within this region as well. And if you look at some of the statistics in terms of how investments are going to Johor, it does support this. So digital infrastructure, obviously, when we talk about DCs, and there were some discussion just now, actually spurs a lot of surrounding technology that will be innovation to Johor. Things like, for example, renewable energy, intelligent grids is the other one that's going to come up. Not to mention, obviously, the soft side of things, right, which is the AI and, of course, cybersecurity that surrounds that, and, of course, the whole cloud environment that comes. So all this actually is going to center around Johor once these billions of dollars of investments go in, and they are actually going in. And they will spill over into Malaysia as well. I think the other question is really not just looking at Johor as Johor, right, but Johor as the national asset for the entire country, which is Malaysia, and where can it actually go? There's a lot of talk just now about trust. And this is really important because when we are talking about trust between organizations, from the technology side, we're also talking about trust, for example, cross-data flow, as well as also cross-IP flow. And I think that's where Johor can actually play a very leading role in shaping national policies and influencing policies that will actually inspire the rest of Malaysia to go forward in the digital infrastructure area. There's so much excitement, and we are very, very excited about Johor.
Yes, I'm sure Microsoft is very excited, or else you won't be putting 2.2 billion into Malaysia. Okay, now to Dato. What is the current and the future initiatives can you share that MOSTI is working on that can support the industry and supercharge the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone?
Yeah, as I said earlier on, we're working with our counterpart and Ministry of Trade and Industry of Singapore in the Innovation Work Group. So when we discussed about the potential areas that can actually enhance, we were talking about, of course, the more advanced technology. Even in regards to the supply of, working together in terms of more clean and alternative energy like hydrogen as a carrier as well as energy source. So that is one aspect where I think surrounding this area there is an opportunity to actually embark on the production of hydrogen, for example, and generation of hydrogen, the production of hydrogen, and ensuring transport and storage of hydrogen. So that could be one. This is in line also with MOSTI's. We launched last year, of course, this hydrogen economy and technology roadmap. So we're targeting in by 2030 some 12 billion ringgit worth of investments and GDP contribution to the country from hydrogen economy and technology advancement. In regards to other kinds of innovation, when you talk about digital economy, for example. Of course, when you talk about digital applications, of course, data centers are coming to play, but how our previous panel speaker was saying, I mean, data centers alone, I mean, the value added into it is as such that there's a limit into it, because it requires a lot more of infrastructure as well to operate. But how do we then utilize this for a better, I mean, more robust growth of potentials, maybe getting talent, creating more opportunities, startups and whatnot, in the areas of AI, which require cloud computing as well, and how certain aspects of digital economy requires a lot of computing power in terms of HPC, for example. Some cloud AI HPC tools that we can utilize and invite more investment into this solutioning. We have a lot of, so to speak, AI players within the country itself, and working together with the likes of multinationals in this regard as well. So the way that AI roadmap that MOSTI has introduced is to also focus on certain economic sector like healthcare and also agriculture. So the surrounding area of this Johor Special Economic Zone is into that. So a few months back, there was this nearby announcement of biotechnology-related areas. I think it's, I can't recall the way, but it's in Johor. So biotechnology is one aspect that under MOSTI's biotechnology policy 2.0, we're targeting 5% of GDP to be contributed by bioeconomic activities. Like for example, the production of, again here, for example, the production of energy source in the likes of renewable oil from microalgae. And also the way that, a lot of biomass resources are within the surrounding areas of this special economic zone. So a lot of the way that MOSTI is, I mentioned just now, hydrogen, mentioned biotechnology, I mentioned about healthcare, AI. These are the areas that have been at the forefront of interest among investors, amongst technology players, amongst, so to speak, technopreneurs to work onto it. And these are being supported by MOSTI through our, for example, our venture capital fund of funds and the MEFCAP that will support the establishment and with companies. We've introduced also, as you're asking me about, of course, the initiatives. We've introduced the Malaysia Venture Capital Roadmap during KL20. So we have rolled out the way that the venture capital should grow, and how do we need the 106 or 116 numbers of venture capitals in the country that will support the growth, including the areas in special economic zone. So, in short, what MOSTI's initiative have been shown is we've outlined our roadmaps in certain, in very specialized and highly potential for economic improvements, enhancement in the likes of AI or hydrogen, biotechnology, and so on and so forth. We also have this support in terms of facilitating startups to our super roadmap, startup ecosystem roadmap until 2030, as well as the venture capital roadmap they've just launched a few months back at KL20. I think it was in April. Yeah. So these are crucial elements that will support not just, of course, special economic zones in Johor. This is where we see this should also be able to be reaping the benefits out of these roadmaps and interventions that we have laid down. Thanks.
Yeah, it's actually for the entire nation, so to speak. And I believe that a lot of talents actually required. Okay, Mr. Najib, this is a question for you. Okay, what are the type of talents that we need in the SEZ? And what can be done to draw a strong pool of skilled workers into Johor and subsequently the rest of Malaysia to support all the plans that has been laid out by MOSTI?
That's a big question. And I think without SEZ also, that's already a big question. I think from the perspective of Talent Corp, to attract talent, for this particular reason, you need to create reasons for SEZ to become a destination for talent. To become a destination for talent, it has to create, or it has to offer all the necessary elements to attract the right talents to come and work and live and serve in Johor or in SEZ for that matter. we are now focusing more on bringing more local talents rather than just settle for expatriates. That's number one. And we are trying to see from the perspective of talent. Of course, number one, if you want to attract the best talent, salary is the main motivation. Remuneration package should be something that we must really consider, and it is to be driven by the industry. There are certain factions trying to advocate or at least to influence the decision for that to be in the form of a policy. And I think we need to work closer together with the industry to really see at how best can we address this alignment of salaries challenge. Because in Singapore, we do know for a fact that there are some areas or sectors which the industry themselves actually review and introduce increment of up to even 40%. So that can be done or can be introduced in SEZ for that matter. Then you can attract the right talent to that particular location. And we are also looking at from the perspective of probably in terms of housing schemes or maybe vehicle ownership. And of course, there are also other elements to be considered by them. I mean, we are drawing references from our experience of doing returning expert program, bringing back Malaysians from abroad. Bringing back Malaysians, we are not just talking about bringing individual back to Malaysia. You are talking about bringing back the whole institution back to Malaysia. So you need to address the unique challenges faced by them. Meaning, if the children are actually experiencing or getting good education system abroad, you must also put that into consideration. Probably that could be one of the elements that you would like to introduce in SEZ. And if the spouse is actually enjoying certain, standard of lifestyle, maybe, I don't know, sometimes people say whenever there is a Starbucks, it means something. I don't know, maybe you can attest to that. But the fact remains, we need to look at it from the holistic perspective. One, of course, you need to make it as a destination for talents. Second, you need to approach this from the perspective of bringing the whole institution to serve and be part of what is happening around in special economic zone. And of course, we are being guided from by the sectors that we have already identified. And you are looking at areas which are quite nascent for not just Johor, I think Malaysia. So for nascent industries, you don't have much information on what are the critical skill sets required for them. So you need to really go and get it from them. So we have quite a number of programs in Talent Corp. One of it, we have this critical occupations list, where by having this list, we are able to ascertain the kind of occupations which are currently highly in demand in that particular area, and what are the skill sets required. And from the strategic perspective, it can also be used on, our effort to probably review our policies, in fact. Recommend for that policy recommendation. That's from the critical occupations list. And we are continuously engaging with the industry players through our industry academia collaboration workshop. So we are doing this quite regularly based on sectors. So I think we are trying to do the same for SEZ as well. So we can have better idea, we can have more information, then only we can develop winning strategies to attract talents to come and be part of SEZ. Thank you.
Okay, it sounds a lot of things that need to be done. I know that sometimes salary is not a determining factor. There are other factors that we can actually develop, and we give us slightly lower amount of salary compared to Singapore. But with other added fringe benefits, we should be able to retain them.
Yeah, if I can add to that. Yeah, actually, we are also looking at from the perspective of probably introducing more on flexibility, work-life balance. So we are advocating for more companies to come on board and adopt ESG principle. And from the S principle, the social principle, then you are able to really look at how your talents can be further developed and enjoy certain work-life balance while serving in your organization. And some of the companies, they are actually being governed or dictated by the upper companies that they are serving. I mean, as they are part of the supply chain, the RBA requirement and other requirements would require them to transform. And they are now looking at how best can they prepare accommodation for their workers and try to avoid from this forced labor kind of challenge. And so we are looking at it from that angle as well. And of course, again, monetary is always the biggest motivation.
Okay, Ms. K. In our earlier conversation, you mentioned that Johor or even Malaysia alone is too small. A market for a startup to grow, scale, and show value for investors. You have had to look beyond to find larger markets. Will this special economic zone provide that springboard into the larger ASEAN market, or soon to be the fourth largest economy? What's more must be done?
Thank you. So this is basically the insights from the proof of concept accelerator I did last year together with Fraunhofer IEM and funded by Meranti. I brought German corporates' problem statements to Malaysia and for our local startups, and I can't even, I had to include SME actually because we just do not have enough. Because when I say startups, it refers to transformative innovation, meaning deep technology. So the German corporates are looking for deep tech companies. Okay, so when it comes to the difficulty was because in Malaysia, right? Okay, in order for these startups to basically sustain, they require revenues. And currently, the Malaysian conglomerates do not have the framework and governance to accommodate startups. They have framework for vendors, but not startups. But I understand the situation right now. But for the MNCs in Malaysia, their focus is production. So therefore, to incorporate a transformative innovation, the decision-making lies in the research and development hub or the HQ. So therefore, these startups which have transformative innovation do not have corporates to supply. So therefore, it's difficult. And if, let's say, there are opportunities, the corporations basically prefers to work with their existing network of suppliers. So the opportunity is actually, right, to create this more of this transformative innovation with Singapore, because they can actually launch at Johor, at the SEZ, work together with Singapore and unlock the VC capital, venture capital, and then launch to the larger ASEAN market. So what needs to be done? Yes, we have a lot of roadmaps, but that's 30%. 70% is execution. We just need to work together, execute according to the milestone. That's my take on that. Thank you.
Sometimes say it is easier than done. Okay, Andrew. With Malaysian digital economy grow to more than 25% of the GDP by this year, what are the technologies that Malaysia should prioritize?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? Obviously, the digital element of the economy, not only in Malaysia, but any other country today, is a very, very strong driver. I'll just highlight two key points, I guess, especially for Malaysia, and looking at the amount of investments that are coming in. First one is really, there's no doubt, AI would be a very important technology that we here in Malaysia and the rest of the world needs to focus in. Why do we say that? We in Microsoft thinks that 2024, this year, okay, will be the year of what we call technology diffusion for AI. We will see AI going into every industry, whether it's horizontal or in depth. and that will be very, very pervasive. Kind of the first time in the history of technology we have. Today we have really a paradigm shift of how we interact with computers. We do it now by natural language, right? Everybody talks to computers, not just texting. And that paradigm shift is going to drive a huge amount of differentiation. We also have a reasoning engine, what we call an intelligent engine, that can actually decipher the interaction through natural language, whether it's by speech or by text, or now even by visuals, right, in order to generate an output by itself. So that technology is going to diffuse. And it's really important that Malaysia gets into this act now, because not only this technology is moving fast, in fact, it is moving 3 times as fast as the internet, maybe even more. And if you look at how internet has moved to power economies around the world, AI is going to do it even much faster. And there is, in fact, also statistics that show that it is material impact of AI to GDP, not only in the developed countries, but also to countries in the global south. Therefore, this technology is something that is really important, and we must actually participate in this technology. I kind of really like what Dato was saying just now when she was talking about startups, right? And how we encourage the ecosystem to actually be part of this here in Malaysia. So AI definitely is going to be and must be something that we adopt very, very quickly. And we are seeing tremendous investment in this area. The other area that I'd like to talk about is also around the area of sustainability. I think there were very good speakers, and YB Datuk Mayor from JB mentioned this also, that when we bring infrastructure of this large-scale digital investments in the country, there is an impact to society, right? There is an impact to natural resources. So we must come up also with a technology to, in fact, ensure that while we make investments in digital infrastructure, we also have innovation to support this type of digital transformation. And people like Microsoft, for example, really look forward to that. We have our own sustainability targets, okay? We have what we call, well, we are actually have announced that by 2030, we will be carbon negative, we will be water positive, which means basically we will put in more good water than what we take, and water is very important for data centers. And we will be zero waste as well. E-waste is also the other area that is really important. And we also say that as a company, we will be what we call 100-100-0, which means that by 2025, which is next year, all our data centers will run 100% of the time on 100% renewable, and it will be zero carbon. Now, we therefore look for innovation. We look for technology from the countries that we invest in, like in Malaysia, to support us in our own investments so as to be able to ensure that we all have a sustainable future for everyone. So if you ask me where Malaysia should invest in, okay, to support this, definitely I think areas of technology in terms of perhaps liquid cooling, renewable energy, which we are doing a lot in solar, right? And even other types of renewables, not just solar. You know, we have a lot of people talking to us about hydrogen, okay, biomass gas. All this is actually very interesting and very, very kind of supporting our vision as well. So in short, basically 2 things: AI, which obviously is very global, okay, and the other, very specific to Malaysia, because of the investments that are going in terms of digital infrastructure built up, really technology around sustainability. I think these 2 will take us very far, and indeed, you know, kind of be a shining light in this part of the world.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Andrew. Because yesterday, for your information, PICOM CIO chapter has its annual CIO conference, and we have a 1-day full discussion on AI. And the takeaway is fantastic. We all agree that AI we cannot avoid it. We need to embrace it. Of course, with the pros and cons that everybody will have to be aware of. Now, I have these questions on Slido that garners quite a high vote compared to other questions. Well, relates to the earlier trust word that was brought up by Professor Ong. Okay, all these relationships, all these economic collaborations require trust. Okay, the question here is, our political scene is uncertain and every government has new policies. How to convince Singapore our plan will not be easily changed overnight? Panelists?
Well, I think if I can take that question first. So when you talk about all these policies, let's take for example the new industrial master plan, or even at MOSTI we have a lot of roadmaps, and specifically we communicate all of these plans and policies even at bilateral level. I mean, even when we share, for example, our national science and innovation policy that we propagated and promoted worldwide has been consistent in terms of the focus areas, the thrust of where we believe we want to invest. Similar to a new MP before that, industrial master plan and so on and so forth. So the main principles of how Malaysia behaves as a country that works with our international partners and trade, and as a trading nation and so on and so forth, working into also venturing into technology-based, knowledge-based, and innovation-based. It has always been in that language. So when we discussed with our partnering countries, when we talk about potential trade and potential partnerships in terms of bilateral relations, it has always been that language. So to say that the policies, I mean, some of these may need to be revised. As you know, policies and roadmaps, these are living documents based on, for example, if you need to change it because there are evidence of for example, some economic change in the world economy. So then we'd have to actually review it. But the thrust of the country, of the policies remain the same, and that has been the same language that we communicate with our trading partners, with our country partners, and so on and so forth. So I think as we move towards, as we embark on this journey of partnering with various countries, including our neighboring countries, we have to always be a bit more of making sure that they understand where we are. Always that approach that we've been taking as we interact with our partners.
Wow. How do we manage that? I think, at least from our perspective, by having this being formalized in an agreement is already a form of commitment by both parties, and we should be looking at it on how both can benefit and both can be impacted from it, either positively or negatively, if one unilateral party decide to not to go ahead with it. So I think by having all these elements being introduced and formalized by both parties in an agreement, that in itself is a form of commitment that was formed based on trust, and these trust principles can be upheld. We can uphold this principle of trust by way of agreement that, at least from the perspective of probably financial commitment by both parties, if you were not to go ahead with it, you will have to bear the consequences of maybe having to pay back 3 times more or something like that. So I think, that has happened before. So I'm quite sure we are not going towards that direction.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Ms. Kay, you have anything to add to that?
I think on my side, because I was in the GLC, So basically, for Iskandar Putri, there were numerous collaboration with Singapore. So therefore, I'm really a strong supporter of JS-SEZ because whenever there's a collaboration with Singapore, the true north never moves. It's just that the way how you get there. So if we have a joint collaboration framework between Johor and Singapore, I think the objective and the true north will be there. So therefore, companies who wants to establish their presence in SEZ basically will feel comfortable and have the trust because there's Singapore as a country and also Johor supported by Malaysia. That's my take.
So I guess I'll take that from a different angle, right? Trust is very important, but I look at it from a technology angle, right? And we have to learn lessons from, let's say, for example, why the EU has been so successful in terms of it being a single market. I'll look at it from trust of, say, for example, with the digital infrastructure, how do we trust consistency of policies around data protection, especially private data protection? And this is something that's really important if we are to become a successful country, okay, starting with not just Johor, but also as a national country in terms of how do we protect data flow between various countries? What are the policies individual countries put in place to ensure that your data, my data, is actually protected within the scope of laws that is consistently carried out throughout every government. And that's why, again, as I say, in Europe that has been very, very successful. So we are working certainly with governments, not only here in Malaysia, but definitely in Singapore, as well as also within the ASEAN community, to ensure that when data flows between the various countries, they are safe and they are actually protected, and they remains within the ownership of the rightful owner. In our case as individuals, it will be you and me that owns the data. And if data is actually transported across to Malaysia, for example, that they are under the laws, okay, protected, very consistent with the rest of the other regions as well, the other countries as well. So this allows data to flow, okay. This allows infrastructure then to be built collectively. And Johor obviously is certainly one of those places where we have now, as we say, deep investment in digital infrastructure. And this always remains in top of mind for many of the infrastructure investors, that there is consistency in trust, okay, of data within the countries. That's the other element of trust also, which is, of course, cybersecurity, okay. Does the country have cybersecurity laws? That allows what we call a zero trust policy, meaning, i.e., everything that is not known is not trusted, okay? And that's also where we are also working with cybersecurity institutions in Malaysia, just like CSM, NAXA. How do we actually work with them to ensure that data is protected and consistently trusted across all the countries? So that's how I would look at this, rather than the other aspect which the other panels have actually spoken about. But from a technology company standpoint, and for those of us who are actually investing in this country, that's how we look at trust. Really, data trust is really, really important. And consistency of policies across every government that comes to those policies is also very important to us.
Yeah, I think the key word is trust. But for the technology and talent part, I think it's very easy, okay? As long as you feed them with the right reward, and for the technologies, basically you feed in the right direction. Basically, we are the supporting pillar for the building, for the vision, for the mission that has been set forth for this Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone. Okay, I have been prompted a few times that we are running out of time. Therefore, I would like to thank all our panelists today for sharing your valuable insights. And thank you everyone for patiently listening. I know your stomach is already making noise. Okay, thank you everyone, and go back to you.
Thank you, panelists, for the very enlightening discussions. Please remain on stage for photo taking.